he was gay.
Oh, wow.
Nobody made any big announcements about
A
that, but
governing body member was gay?
he had to be. And I was just absolutely floored because he was talking to me as if I was an adult. It was
When you were
at
like,
12
what,
years old.
12, right? 12 years old or something?
And the next thing I knew, his hand was going up my leg. Yeah, the girl went over. I leaned over. I looked in the car, and he had exposed himself. And
Wait, before you were 16,
yeah,
you brought five people in.
yeah, I loved this. This man was actually doing things to the sisters in the name of medical procedure,
Oh
which
my God.
would be construed as rape.
Oh yeah, that one. Yeah, a big one. Yeah.
Yeah,
The
same
generation that
volume.
will not pass away. And they're all dead. Everybody on this
Yes,
picture.
everybody in there is dead. And I knew uh, most of them.
You knew most of them, huh?
I could pick it up. In fact, there's one man here who was at Bethel and his wife, and he was an older gentleman and he was an elder, and he had a woman in New York City. He had a mistress in New York City.
Oh wow.
What happened to the book study? On Tuesday night, we had the book study. They wanted to know, do they still have that? They have it combined at the meeting on Thursday. But the fact of the matter, as I was told, the kids would go somewhere and play. And there was some other kid, maybe was older, and there was molestation. There was too much molestation.
Really? You think
That's
that's why?
uh-huh. That's why they moved it out of Tuesday on Tuesday night.
All right. I am super excited about today because I've been waiting for this interview for so many years. Like, I think 5 years ago, I reached out to Barb and she was always busy, we couldn't get together. And then finally, it's here today. So I am super excited to introduce Barbara Anderson. You've been such a great contributor towards the XJW community. I've seen many of your videos, and now I'm excited to have you on my channel. And for those of you who don't know Barb, please, Barb, tell us about who you are, how did you become a witness, and what did you do as a witness?
Oh, well, I was a Catholic child. My parents were both Catholic, but not really practicing Catholics.
Okay.
My mother came from Poland. My father was second generation Polish, and they lived in New York, uh, in the city.
We have the
And
same roots.
my uh, brother was born, they were married 2 years. My brother was born in 1938, and I was born in 1940. And
1940.
so uh, they finally moved out to Long Island, and that was a very nice area to have a family there. My father was a profession. He was a rigger, and probably don't people don't know what that is, but he was a
For
crane
cranes.
operator.
For cranes, yeah.
Yeah, and he worked at the Brooklyn Navy Yard for many years. He was his uncle. Okay, I got to think about this now because that's a long time ago that I
Yeah.
told. And when he was just, I'd say he was in his 20s, they were drafting for World War II, and my uncle,
Right.
he was drafted into the army, and eventually he became General Patton's communication man in Morocco. And
Oh, okay.
my father wasn't interested in that kind of life, so he volunteered for the civil service. And so they were delighted to take him to into the service because of his talents with the heavy equipment.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so they put him on a big ship, and and it took a week to get over there to California from New York. So one of the things he did, I found this out much later uh, in my life, and he loaded the bullet for the atomic bomb. And yes, with the
Wow.
crane.
Oh,
And
wow.
of course, and then he spent the rest of the war years in Hawaii, York Island, and he was on the crane, and he was lifting up airplanes and airplane engines, that type of thing. So when he came home, after being away for quite a while, and we had a very good life, my brother and I. And as I said, we weren't active Catholics. My father was an altar boy, and he remembered as a child how unhappy he was as an altar boy because he said that the nuns were mean.
Mm.
And as an altar boy, he said after church services, he loaded the money that was donated in, it was in money bags, and he put the money bags in the trunk of the car of the priest. And he unloaded the alcohol when he got to the rectory. And that's why he didn't pursue that. My mother and he were married 1 year by a very important priest in the area. And a year later, he was killed in a car
Oh.
accident, and the woman that was with him was his mistress.
Mm.
So you see why my family were not active Catholics. Plus, my mother in Poland, her father was spoke 5 languages, and he was very talented. He
Wow.
played most any instrument. I didn't inherit any of that, by the way, but he could play violin, accordion, and
Wow.
many instruments. So he had
Wow.
he was a sheriff in one of the cities.
Oh,
So
wow.
I know a lot about him. I did a lot of research on him, and my background and my family is really very fascinating on both sides. So my
I,
father side, he, when he was a little boy, his father had been in the U.S. only a few years before my father was born, and so my grandfather changed his name, his Polish name, into another name because his Polish name translated into whitewash. And the kids were making fun of his kids at school, and they were living in a Polish section of New York City. So the kids were all Polish. So he
right.
changed his name, and and there's quite a history. So anybody with my maiden name, a male, I'm related to, because he is a made up name, actually. He didn't just pick it out somewhere, he made it up. And but his previous name, which meant whitewash, I found out that in Poland there was a whole town by that name, and that name wasn't an accident. That area where my grandfather and his father, and go way back, where they lived, uh, it was a place of where out of the earth they got uh, many kinds of minerals and all sorts of things.
Mhm.
Lime, lime was very important to that area. So I was so surprised because the name was so unusual, and I don't really say it because when I did the research on it, I found out that that name was the name of the town. And after World War II, the relative of my grandfather was hung by the Allies because he was in the underground, but he was a Nazi, and so they hung him and his mistress. So I said, my father's side, I don't say that name. It's in Wikipedia, by the way, and it has all the details of my father. So,
Wow. Quite
and
a
my
history.
great grandfather was kidnapped by the Tsar, and the Tsar's troops came into Poland, and they took 200 men, young men, back to Russia. They kidnapped them. And my great grandfather was one of them. He was 18 years old, and he was 30 years in the salt mines. And when uh, another czar was on the scene, he was a good man, and he freed all the serfs. At the same time, the United States was freeing the black people. Emancipation in the United States, and Poland was emancipation also for the serfs. And so my great grandfather came home when he was 50 years old. So he married a 20-year-old.
Oh, wow.
And then that was my grandfather. And then so my mother's side is very interesting. My mother remembers as a child hearing my grandfather or her father that he was excommunicated from the Catholic Church for reading the Bible. And so the priest would come over to the house and they'd have schnapps.
So wait. The Catholics would excommunicate people at that time?
Oh,
I
yes.
thought that all ended
Oh, no,
centuries ago.
no. My mother came here in 1930, and she's born in, no, maybe it was later than that. I don't know. Anyway, I think well, I don't remember some of the things about her, but uh, she remembers her father talking with the priest. She could hear from the other room, and they would be arguing religion. And so my grandfather said to the priest, "Why do you teach hellfire? The Bible doesn't support it." And the priest said, "People are like pigs, they have to be herded. And that's why we teach hellfire." She never forgot that. And so when she
Wow.
was to the United
There's
States,
truth to that.
yeah. So,
That's how they felt about people, right? That's not
but they
what
still told
reality is,
us
but
Catholic. And when we were born, we were signed in as Catholic babies. And
yeah. Yeah.
so
Wow.
I used to go
How
to,
how did you become a witness? How did that whole change for you guys?
well, we only went to the Catholic Church on Easter, and the whole family went. The uncles and aunts and my grandparents on another side. Anyway, the so I wasn't really a nominal Catholic, but I was born in 1940, and so as a small child, all I heard at home was about the war,
Yeah.
Poland, Auschwitz. Uh, my mother had her sisters, two sisters, and a brother in Poland, and so they were always talking about what was going on. They were packing boxes to send to Poland. It was free. The government would they didn't charge to send things into Poland. So that's what I remember, and them talking about the war all the time. So one day I was in one part of the house. War was over, and it was a quite a large house for family. It was upstairs. My father's parents lived, and it was a two-family house. And so I was in the one area, and I came into through some of the rooms, and I came into the kitchen, and there was a man sitting in the kitchen table, and he had a uniform on. He had all medals on, and he was a colonel in the Polish army, and he was there to talk to my mother about her family. And they were looking for my mother, and my mother was looking for her family. And so he was sitting there telling them about this. So I remember like it was yesterday. He was here on government business from Poland to see somebody in Washington, D.C. So he came and tried to find my mother, and he did. So I have a very nice childhood. Uh, couldn't complain at all, but I absolutely was very unhappy about there was so much unhappiness in the world. My
At
grandma,
that
she took
time.
me to the movies, and my brother, every Saturday we went to the movies for 10 cents. So it was two cowboy movies, and in between there was a newsreel. That's the way it was in those years. And so I remember it as clear as could be. The Allies were marching into Auschwitz, and the photographers were there, and they filmed these children standing behind the wire fencing around Auschwitz, and they were so skinny and so pathetic. And in fact, I saw that same film about 2 years ago in television. It was just 5 minutes, but it was a discussion on the war, and they showed that, and I said it was just like yesterday, and I was like 5 years old, and when I saw those children, I cried and I cried and I cried, and I couldn't understand why they had to live that way, and I had it so good. And so
Yeah.
I've been an advocate for happiness since I'm a little girl. I always felt that I had to do something, and so that's my past. So when I went to the church, I would go to confession. Mother and dad did not, as I said, and I went to after school once a week to the Catholic Church to be educated in the Catholic beliefs so I could have my first communion. And that same thing they taught us again. We were released from school Thursday afternoon and walked over to all we little Catholics and walked over to be trained for my it was confirmation, and that was supposed to really I'm entering into the Catholic world as a soldier.
Yeah.
Yeah. So uh, so I was on the fringe, and but as far as child abuse now, see, I'm so fully involved in that. But I had some experiences as a child,
In
and
Catholic Church?
it wasn't the church; it was people who went to that church. But I was over at my girlfriend's house, and her father worked in Manhattan. He was a Wall Street uh, man. You know, everybody looked up to him in the neighborhood. And so I was doing my homework with her. She was just around the corner, as kids do. And we were up in her room, and they had a big window upstairs, and we were sitting on a window seat. So her father came home from work, and he had a beautiful suit on. You know, my father never wore a suit. You know, he was a crane operator. This man was looked so ritzy. You know, so he told her, my girlfriend, to go downstairs. Her mother had something for her to do, and he came into the room, and I was still sitting there because girl was going to be back in a few minutes. So he sat down next to me. He started talking to me. I was 12, and we wore skirts back then, not pants. So, uh, and I was just absolutely floored because he was talking to me as if I was an adult. You know, it was
When you were
at
like
12
what,
years old.
12, right? 12 years old or something?
And the next thing I knew, his hand was going up my leg. So I stood up. I didn't say a word. I stood up and I walked out of the house. I went down the stairs, walked out of the house. I never told the girl what happened because I didn't want her to lose her respect for her father. I just felt that way because my
Yeah, yeah.
mother, she 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 didn't scare me about sex or anything like that. In fact, I read a book called Grapes of Wrath. I was 7 years old, and my aunt had that book. It was very popular, and it was out in the porch that we had. And so I read it. That's how I found out how babies were born, reading this book, And so, uh, but I knew that that was very improper for what he did. And I never talked to her again. I mean, we were in the same classes, and I wouldn't even talk to her. That was mean of me, but I didn't know how to handle it, and I never
Mm.
told my mother. I didn't want to start a ruckus, but at least I had that bit of smarts because I didn't know what to do, and then another time when we were walking over, another girlfriend of mine from school to be in our educating at church. So we walked by a parked car, and there was a man inside. And he motioned. He rolled down the window, and he motioned for us to come over to the car. And the other girl went over. I leaned over. I looked in the car, and he had exposed himself. And so I was pulling on her to get away from the car, and she didn't understand why, because she didn't see what I saw. And we ran to the church and told the nuns. And the next day, believe it or not, we were the nuns went to the police, and the next day, my mother and my father and me were at a lineup at the police station to pick out the person. Those were the only two times in my life that I had anything like that. Other than that, I had a nice life, but I was very concerned about world events. And so, um,
Sure.
so when I was always moping around because I'm trying to figure out what I wanted to be in the future and how I could help in the world. So it's just me. And
Yeah.
so I was another time I was at another we lived in a housing development. So I had a girlfriend here and I had a girlfriend there. And I was at her house just for a little while, and there was a knock at the door. The woman at the door was a witness, but I had no idea. And the lady of the house, my girlfriend's mother, she took a book from her, and then she said to us, she said, I don't want to talk to that lady. Get rid of her. And she said to her daughter. Her daughter didn't want to do it, so I said, I'll do it. So I went to talk to this lady, and she was a former Catholic from Brooklyn, mind you.
Mhm.
And we lived about 30 miles from Brooklyn. So she was smart, and she was Italian. And her
Okay.
husband was an editor for the prime Long Island newspaper. So she was a pioneer, and she was walking door to door, and it was hot in the summertime. So she didn't drive, but so she said to me, what religion was I? And or she asked me that. I said, I was very curious. And I said, Catholic. And she said, well, she said, I'm very familiar with the Catholic Church. So I listened to her. She said, you pray the Lord's Prayer, don't you? And of course I did. I went to confession,
Yeah.
and, kids stuff so, I hit my brother in the head or something like that, and the priest forgives me. So she said, I said, oh, yeah, I prayed the Lord prayer all the time. And she said, well, do you know what you're praying for? And I said, what? I didn't know. I couldn't describe it. It's just a religious prayer. And the Hail Mary, I said 10 Hail Marys and 15 or 20 Our Fathers. And so she said, about the kingdom. She talked about the kingdom that I prayed for. And no one ever told me that. And so I had no idea. I was I was just so happy that that was God's purpose. And so I told her to come to my house, which was 2 blocks away. And she came that evening. And my mother had been taking the Watchtower and Awake from the lady to be kind, and she would throw them away. So when she came to the house that evening, my mother said, at the door, she said to me, I know that lady. She's been here before. So we invited her in, and she continued her discussion. She was very, very intelligent. She had a grown daughter, and her daughter was with her. And so we accepted the Bible study. We were studying 3 months when we asked, what was the name of the religion that they were in. We never thought about it. All we thought about, we were learning the Bible. And for the first time in our life, it was the answer to mankind's problems. I was so happy. And then I was baptized. That was in around August the year before. I was 12, I believe. And when I was 13, so it was approximately 8 months later that I was baptized.
See, after the war, there were I'm assuming probably 2 decades people still lived because of the effects of the war, and it
yes,
was still in their mind. And the whole idea of, oh, there is a great news, paradise is soon, and those things that took place, those are just fulfillments of the prophecy. That idea was selling probably really good.
yes, it was.
Yeah.
Um, my mother lost her family. Uh, she never knew where they were. For a little while, she did, but by the end of the war, they were all scattered.
Plus,
I didn't
the,
know, and she didn't know they were looking for her.
the idea, I guess, of resurrection also hit people, right? Because they lost people in the war,
Yeah.
right? So they're like,
There
oh
were
yeah,
so many,
I could see them again, and yeah, please bring
yeah,
it in, right? So
so many
that
scriptures that fit
yeah,
that
for
time,
sure.
know, and also they fit what God was going to do for all mankind. And so she invited us to come to Bethel in Brooklyn. I think 6 months we went to Brooklyn for lunch because they had that invitation. It was only 200 people at Brooklyn then. So that was an extraordinary visit because the most of the people there were young. It was young men because they had the big presses. In fact, I have this picture of when my husband was single. He was at Bethel, and this is a 1959, May of 1959, and there's a huge press.
So this is yeah, I can see him. Yeah.
Yes, I
So
married a Bethelite eventually.
how did you? Because you didn't tell us the story. How did you become a Bethelite?
Well, it was well, that was way in the future, but in 1956, so I'm 16, and my family moved to Miami, and then they went to. Oh, I was 17 when I took an assignment with two other sisters, witness sisters, and we went to Mississippi to serve where the need was greater. So it was a college town. We didn't know that. And of course, the society sent us here. We put in a application. So both the other girls had finished school, and I was just finishing. And so that town was overrun with young women college students because that's where Mississippi State was located. And we couldn't find a job because they had all the jobs.
Right.
Yeah. So we lasted about 4 months and we had a little money left. So rather than go back to Miami, which three of us, we didn't want to go back. And I really wanted to go back to New York because I was so active. When I was a young girl and I become a witness. I was 14, and the man who was a congregation servant was an ex-Bethelite. So every Sunday or so, I'm not sure it was every Sunday, but he would invite a Bethelite to speak, and somebody special that he knew from in the 1930s at Bethel. So I was always invited because I was old beyond my years. Even though I was 14, 15, 16, I acted like I was in my 20s.
Right.
I wasn't a child. I never acted like a child. And uh, and so then I always got invited to when they after the meeting, I got invited to their house, and they had two little boys, a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. So I gotta tell you the names of people who were famous back then at the headquarters. I was like Mary sitting at the feet of Jesus. I was, they were telling experiences about the Charles Taze Russell and the early work because they were older and they had known him. And
Right.
so, I was just in seventh heaven. Plus the fact that they also, the couple, and this is the way it was back then. The man and wife who he was the congregation servant. They loved dancing, ballroom dancing,
Oh
and they had
yeah.
a finished basement. So it wasn't unusual on Saturday evening they would have a get together, and all the couples in the congregation were invited. So I was studying. Before I was 16, I brought 5 people into the organization, and one of them was an Arthur Murray dancing instructor.
Wait, before you were 16,
Yeah,
you brought 5 people in.
yeah, I loved to go.
Whoa.
I used to go by myself even. I mean, I wasn't that. I loved it. And one time this man told me he was going to kill me if I came back and bothered his wife again. I was walking back to make a back call, as they called it, and thinking, well, he's going to kill me, but I'll be in the resurrection. So, but I
Yeah.
brought that woman in, and eventually her husband came in. But whatever became, we moved to Miami 2 years later. But anyway, she taught me how to dance, and my father and mother, they had a finished basement in our house, and so it wasn't unusual. Something was going on at our house. You see, the kids later, the Watchtower forbid all of that, but they didn't early on. And so I had a wonderful time dating. And I had by the time I was 16, and I had 2 marriage proposals. But I really was, I acted older. Um, and
But people back then were getting married pretty quickly, no?
yeah,
Like this is 18,
but
19, they were getting married.
I
Yeah.
wasn't interested, but they were Bethelites. And they were looking for a wife to bring to Bethel, or they were 19. You could go to Bethel when you were 16 back then. Not a lot of them did go at 16, but you could.
You
You
could.
had to have super qualifications. One man, he was a scholar working on the forerunning of the New World Translation. And he was 16 years old. He could speak the Greek, and he wasn't Greek. He was genius. He was raised a witness. He was at Bethel from 16 on working on the New World Translation. So I associated with people like that. My young dating years and my young life was wonderful. I had wonderful times. The ballroom dancing, I learned that. And so I was out in service or I was dancing. It was so much fun going to
That's
school.
cool.
And uh, sometimes the kids, well, when we had our first lunch at Bethel, my mom and I, when we were invited by the lady who studied with us, after the lunch, and there were 6, the table was for 10, and there were 7 young men sitting at that table, and I was 16 or 15 then, yeah. And I was in seventh heaven. I just had Notice voice. And so, oh, the conversation, they treated me so respectfully, so nice. And my mother, we were so impressed with them. And so, one dining room, eventually with 4,000 at Bethel when I was there, you had dining rooms upon dining rooms. So, Nathan Noor was the president, and he always had the concluding prayer, or he would ask him, somebody who was a very important Bethelite to say it. So he said to everybody through the microphone to remain in their seats after the prayer and don't get up and go back to work. And so this was very unusual. So I was told by the lady that studied with us, and yeah, it was. And it almost tripped us up because seven young men went to a party that weekend, and we came in Monday for our lunch. And these boys got into so much trouble out in some witness's house in Long Island, and they were drinking. And Noor decided that he was going to scold them, and he made those seven stand up and come over to by his table, the main table in the room, and they stood them against the wall, and he berated them something awful. And we sat stunned. And then he dismissed us all to go our way. And so we went on our tour of Bethel. My mother told me years later that was almost the end. She said, I never saw any behavior like that out of any adult towards other people's kids, and what he said to them. He about told them, yeah, he was a something. He was not a nice man. Only to those he was worked with, he was very nice. And he was, there's no describing him. So anyway, that I didn't, I wasn't so bothered like my mother was, but she was an adult and she thought it was not the right thing to do. So anyway, we went on our tour, and then we continued on our being witnesses until my father decided that he wanted to move to Miami. My father worked for Republic Aviation in Long Island, which is no longer there, but it was very important for him years and years ago. And he had a partner, and when he was picking up an airplane engine with the crane, his partner was telling him where to move it and so forth, and the cables broke and it killed his partner, the engine. And my father was so broken up over that he said, I can't go back to work, and he wouldn't. And that's why we moved to Miami. He put the house up for sale that he built. He'd do anything. He built us a lovely home in Long Island by himself. I mean, he was anyway. So we went to Miami, and I didn't go back to regular school. I went to trade school. I learned shorthand, and also I could type. I was 16 when I could do shorthand, and I also could do bookkeeping. So I worked a while, and we went to the need was greater. It was 1958, and we heard through the grapevine that there was going to be this huge convention in New York at Yankee Stadium in the Polo Grounds. So we decided rather than go back to Miami, we go on to New York. And of course, that's where I was from. And I knew people there. So I called the lady who studied with me. And so this is many not a lot of years later, but anyway, she told us to come on, and she put us up until we found work, and that's what we did. And so we found part-time work, and the rest of our time we spent at Bethel working on the rooming paperwork, because 250,000 people were coming in, and people were going door to door and getting rooms in houses and apartments and everything. So somebody's got to sign all of that.
And it
So
was 6 days, right? It was a 6 day convention.
I think it was 7, wasn't it?
Seven? 7 day convention. Wow.
I think so. That's a long time ago. No, I don't think it was 6. Well, anyway, so when I was at Bethel, working there, and then I had the car. It was my car, and so one of the girls didn't go, so it was another girl and myself, and she worked full time. So we got to meet different Bethelites and so forth. So there was a party. Somebody had a party at Bethel in their room, and so a few of us girls were invited, and that's when I briefly met this man who was a young man. He was 22, I think, something like that. And so we talked a while, and we didn't stay long because we had to trip back to Long Island. So a few days later, when I was back at Bethel, I saw him, and he was, I waved to him. I was at the elevator, and it was a mob of us waiting to get on the elevator. And when it stopped on the floor, there was many people in it already, in a big elevator. And so I saw him, and I waved at him because I had just met him. So I went like that, and he ignored me. And so I said, oh, well, then when a little while later, there was a woman in the congregation that I attended out in Long Island, and she was having a little party. And she just said she had a son at Bethel. They moved in from Dallas, Texas, and they wanted to be with their son, who had come from Dallas, and he was part of the Bethel family. So she talked to me, and she said, and my girlfriends, and she said, I'm having a small party at the house. She said, would you like to come? Some of the Bethelites are coming, and I have a son at Bethel, and he's coming. And so I really wasn't interested. And but she was so nice, and I didn't want to hurt her feelings. So we went. That morning I bought a pair of new shoes, and they had a buckle on the top. And you're wondering, why was that? Why is she bringing up something like new shoes? Well, it has you asked me to talk about before, years ago when I was a new witness. Well, this is what happened. So I hear in the kitchen, I'm sitting in the living room, and I hear in the kitchen, and it was 7 boys, young men. And so he drove the car. His father got him a car, and he deposited him there, and he went to park the car. And there was one local, I think it was one or two local boys. And so I hear her, the woman, I hear the screen door, and it made noise when it closed. And so I hear her say, it's the blonde in the living room. And so he goes, Mother, I'm not interested in any blonde. I have my Bethel career.
Ooh.
And so anyway, I thought, what the heck? So a little while later, like minutes, he comes into the living room, and they start putting music on the, the Victrola, records. And one of the first songs they put on was a tango. And so, people could dance back then. And
Yeah.
so he asked the girls in the room, which weren't that many, it's like 5 of us, and, maybe 6. So he asked, he asked all the girls, but wasn't going to ask me because he knows his mother has something to do with this.
Ah.
So he asked the girls one by one, "Do you tango?" And each of them said no. And he got to me and he said, "Do you tango?" And I said, "Yes." See, I had learned all that.
It came
So,
in handy?
yeah. So we tangoed. He learned how to tango from his sister, who in Dallas, she was in a school play when she was in high school, 12th grade. And they put on this play, and she learned how to tango for that part. And she taught her brother how to tango. So that's how he knew. Because he was a witness. He didn't do that on his own, you know. So
Yeah.
anyway, his sister, older sister, she never did. She didn't like the witness stuff. So, but so we tangoed, and there's a step you take your foot and you cross over. And when he crossed over, uh, and I had to do the same step, his big feet hit my buckle on my new shoes and broke my shoe.
Oh.
And I got even with him. I did. He I tell this to everybody because I tell my story everywhere I can because he ended up paying for my shoes the rest of his life.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. So so anyway, we go back to Bethel. I'm working there, and then he comes down in the elevator. And then he told me, he said, I didn't have my glasses on. He said, I never wear them at work. But he said, I didn't know. I said, why did you shun me the other day when I waved at you? And he said, I didn't see you. He said, I didn't have my glasses on. So
Okay.
that was the reason for it. And we hit it off right away. And so I was working there and I was seeing him and so we were engaged at the 1958 convention at Yankee Stadium in Progress. In the interim, before that, his parents moved from Long Island, and they moved 2 blocks over from Yankee Stadium, and so uh, we were we were going to see them every year when my husband when he left Bethel and we married and we lived in West Palm Beach, we um, uh, would go to New York to see them. So every time there was an assembly, big assembly, we would use that time. By that time, we had a little boy. We were pioneering. We were being readied for the circuit work when I got pregnant. So I had a little boy, and but Joe was regular pioneering for a long time. He pioneered on and off for years, and he always had a good because he could do a lot of different things. So he had some really good jobs. One of the first jobs he had when he came there is at a place that was called Air Products, which is still in existence. And that's a government facility, made some kind of gas of some sort. And it was a wonderful job. We were newly married. And in fact, that place actually paid for all the hospital stuff when my son was born. And so we were very well established. And then he was told by the elders, servant body, that the society made a ruling that you couldn't work for a government facility. And Joe was a congregation servant.
Why
And
not?
he quit that job, and it was excellent. And
What's wrong with working? It's not connected to an army or anything. It's
the
just
way it was, you couldn't work for a government job. And so that
even
was,
as a post office person or something like that. No.
no, they made, it was for the armed forces. It was a gas, some kind of gas that,
Oh, okay. Yeah, if it's for armed forces, yeah, it still stands till today.
I mean, it wasn't owned by the government, but it provided all of the stuff for the government. So, so he quit that job, and guess who took over and took the job when it was open? It was another congregation servant from Lake Worth, Florida, that took the job.
Oh my gosh.
So see, I'm trying to tell you that's life in the organization. It's just people, you know.
Yeah,
And,
of
and
course.
we had an experience unlike any of I never heard of one like it. I mean, it wasn't the worst experience, but we had another one. When we were first married, there was a man in our congregation who was a congregation servant, and he moved in from, I believe it was Ohio. This is a long time ago, and to West Palm Beach, and he was a chiropractor, and so he was retired, and where he lived up north, it was easy for Bethelites to visit, and he and his wife opened their home to Bethelites. Poor Bethelites couldn't go on vacation, couldn't afford to go. He opened his home. They could come on their vacation, and he had them stay at his house, and he'd wine and dine them. We're talking about young people and the older ones too. There wasn't a lot of money back then in the organization. So when he moved to Florida and he bought a house, he actually turned in there's a room Floridians have, they call a Florida room. It's a porch, but it's always structured the same in medium-sized houses. And so he turned that into where he'd give adjustments. And then he put a box out, and he said that you could put a donation in. Well, witnesses came from all over the place to the chiropractor and put a small donation in the box, and everybody was happy, except for the fact that there was something wrong. We didn't know, but this guy. So Joe comes from Bethel, and he's immediately made the assistant congregation servant. So this guy Earl, he's the congregation servant when we came there. Well, Earl got it through in his head. Joe's young, you know, and come from Bethel. So Earl was so worried that this guy was going to take his position. He wrote Bethel, and there was somebody at Bethel who was very influential in those years. He was, they only had the three governing body those years. And that were the three who were the directors of the Watchtower of Pennsylvania. So they were governing body. That's what they were called. And
Only three? Only three guys?
yeah, you had the president of the corporation, vice
Yes.
president, treasurer. And I looked at the Proclaimer's book when it was finished, because that was my book I worked on when I was at Bethel, but I looked through the whole book and to see years and years ago exactly was I right on this, and I sure was. It's in there that they were the three corporation directors of the Watchtower, Pennsylvania, were called the governing body. That's why Nora was so furious when the new governing body came in 72 and was official by 75, because he lost his position. He was just one of 18 people who became a governing body officially. So he was very angry. I got stories to tell you later. And so uh, Earl, this is very important. That's why I'm bringing it up.
Okay.
So Earl was writing somebody at Bethel, calling Joe, that young whippersnapper wants my position as county servant. Well, that wasn't Joe. Everybody ever knew Joe. Joe's not that way. He is a most unpretentious, but he's a hard worker and a kind man. And the last thing in the world would he even think of such a thing. But Earl got it in his head that Joe wanted his position. And that was difficult. Earl was also had a mental problem. And he was kissing the sisters who he was adjusting. Yeah. And one of them called me up and she said it was awful. And she said, "Did you know he does that?" And I said, "No." And so nothing much came out of that. And then he was doing other things as time was going on that were not nice.
Hmm.
So the circuit overseer, wonderful circuit overseer, and his wife were assigned to West Palm Beach. Well, they had the whole Florida and part of Georgia anyway. So we're talking in early 60s. So this man was actually doing things to the sisters in the name of medical procedure,
Oh
which
my God.
would be construed as rape.
But he was not a doctor, so why would they even trust him that he would be
Well,
qualified
that's
to
the way
do
he was
anything?
years ago, and he had active hands, and what he was doing with them was not what he should have done with them.
And he was a circle of his year.
No, this was the congregation sermon. The circuit overseer,
Oh, okay.
we told this man, and so he wrote to he investigated, and it was true. Earl was also taking new people out to the ocean and baptizing them, and he wouldn't tell anybody. He would collect years ago. Remember when people had subscriptions to the Watchtower, and when they expired, the society would send you a slip, and you'd call on them to resubscribe. And so
Yeah.
he had a pile of them every month. Well, Earl was keeping those, and then he would go out in service, and he had a lot of service time because he was making all the calls and getting all these subscriptions. So he was a doozy. And so anyway, they got enough evidence on him, but they couldn't do anything. The circuit overseer talked to people at headquarters. They didn't know what to do. And what happened was that the circuit overseer was smart. And he looked in the Florida telephone book and under Earl's name, and he had after his name DC, Doctor of Chiropractic. And he didn't have a license in Florida. So he was retired, and he was advertising that he was a doctor of chiropractic. So that's why he was removed. Not because he was doing what he was doing to the sisters.
His license expired.
You see, you see the the mentality,
Yeah. Weird.
and eventually the not doing anything about child abuse. You see how that's why I bring this up.
Yeah. It builds up
Those
there.
men at headquarters in the service department didn't think that what he was doing to the women was worth removing him.
It's weird. When you think about it, it's just weird.
Yes, so he was removed at that point, and my husband was definitely made the congregation servant. So he was that until we moved to Tennessee, where the need was greater many years later. So I never have forgot that, because what we went through for a few months equals what many people go through in the organization. But I never thought about leaving it. It was, to me, it was a truth.
Yeah.
And
Because
whatever
there's a
that
big
means.
difference between believing the doctrines and the religion being true and misbehavior of individuals,
That's
right?
right. That's
And myself, I don't think I would have ever left no matter what I would see in the congregation, because for me, it was the same thing. It's like, okay, when I read the Bible and I see how Israelites were behaving, right? There was
exactly.
wars and killings and rapes and everything was there, right? So, and they were still the chosen nation. So, same thing here. We're imperfect. We're making mistakes, and there's a whole bunch of people that, doing bad things. And this is why we have judicial committees and deal with those things. And even if we're not perfect, we're still the true religion, right? We still have the true. We're still a true nation. So, individual behavior, or even if something was not dealt with properly, would never scare me off
No,
because of that mentality, right?
us too. My husband and I, we eventually Earl, when he was making the return visits on those expired subscription slips, he met a woman and who was recently divorced. She was young, and he was old, and so. But she was desperate, and her husband was an airline pilot, and he was divorcing her, and she had a little boy. He was about 6 years old. So Earl married her. His wife had died, and she was of the anointed. He never called himself of the anointed, but she did, and she was always kind of sad looking, and she hardly ever spoke to her husband, but we didn't judge her. So that little boy on the meet, and he gave the property to the a congregation to build a kingdom hall on, because there was a one in the central West Palm Beach, still there, by the way, and or as far as I know it is, and a little bit out of the inner part of West Palm Beach. There was it was a growing area, and we were bringing in people, especially young people, because Florida at that time was a place that people were running away from home. It was hippie movement, and you found transients everywhere. Joe and I studied with, we brought in so many people because so many people were unhappy, and they came to Florida to get away. They could sleep on the beach, for that matter. They didn't have to have money, and so you had a big hippie movement. So overall, we studied and brought in a good 80 people into the organization, but we knew how to talk to them, and we were just overflowing with happiness because we had the truth. So um, but it was the kind of people. It wasn't that we were so fabulous as witnesses. It was a transient time in the 60s in South Florida. And so congregations were getting bigger. And we had an opportunity to come to Tennessee to a wedding. And when we did that, we fell in love with the area and decided to move here because there was plenty of witnesses at that point. I was 76. And so when uh, Earl saw me and Joe years later, um, he made a snide remark at me because really, uh, he got himself in such hot water, and I'm the one that found out. So he knew that, and so. But anyway, he was. People would. Eventually, that little boy was driving us all crazy at the Kingdom Hall because we didn't have air conditioning, and so he was during the meetings. He was running around outside and playing war with the other kids and yelling and screaming. And she left him, but he he was answering the door when somebody would call. Oh, before that, when they were together, he was still a servant, and he had a Christmas tree in his house. So there was something very organically wrong with him.
Yeah, that's
And so
unusual,
then he
to say the
left him
least.
and they divorced. And then he would answer the door stark naked. So
Yeah,
it
it's
was
something
really a
different,
very
challenging there.
difficult time, and his friends at headquarters couldn't believe this. But we found out later that he was in trouble. That's why he moved down to Florida from where he lived, because he made the headlines in the newspapers that when he was arrested for wasn't paying his income tax, and so he was arrested. That was before he moved to Florida. So he was a lot younger then. There was just something there. But the point I'm making here, there was always something going on with we people. My favorite expression is that this would be a wonderful world to live in if it wasn't for people. Isn't that the truth? Yeah.
Well, it would be
You,
definitely different. I don't know.
you
I
know,
didn't live without people around, but
people
uh,
are always doing things that can make
yeah,
things
but we
difficult
have a
for
tendency of messing things up. That's for
you.
sure.
Yeah. So, anyway, I was going to show a picture of there was a wonderful man and his wife that moved to Florida, and he older people in the organization would not know him, but would know of his voice. And so this man, he moved to Lake Worth, Florida, which was the next southern town by on the beach side of the eastern side of Florida. Uh, so this guy had a connection with headquarters when as a child. His father and mother were very, very active witnesses. Went way back to Charles Taze Russell. So his family moved to uh, Lake Worth, Florida, and he had a brother-in-law. His sister, her older sister, got married, and that man, the brother-in-law, eventually became the district overseer of Florida. He was a very nice man. Well, anyway, his younger brother, raised as a witness. He jumped into the ocean one day, uh, as kids do, and he was I think he was like 13 or so. And when he jumped into the water, there was something underneath, like something big, and he broke his neck.
Oh boy.
So it was his the brother-in-law that saved his life. Jumped in after him when he didn't come up and saved his life, and also uh, worked on his after the finish with the hospitalization and all that. He was always massaging him, and he couldn't walk, and one half of the side was paralyzed, and that was before Joe and I moved there. So, but this man had the most beautiful speaking voice, absolutely beautiful, and as an adult, he could walk. There was only two people in the United States that could walk with that injury. And
Oh wow.
he dragged one leg behind as he walked, and one arm was like this. And yet he was on uh, television news. He was a newsman for Channel 5 in West Palm Beach, which is still in existence, Channel 5, very important. And he was a newsman because nobody could see that he was crippled. And so, as I said, there's only two people like him. Statistically, it was in a medical book that you never walk, but he did. And
Well,
he was
good for
very,
him. At least that, right? At
very,
such a young age. Jeez.
yes.
Whole life ahead of you. And
Huh? And
Wow.
he married, he went to school, but everybody was used to him. He was very nice, jovial, whatever. And he married a very, very lovely,
Still got married,
absolutely
huh? Wow. Good for
beautiful,
him.
beautiful girl in high school that he met. And she wasn't a witness. She converted to marry him.
Oh,
But
wow.
if he hadn't had that accident, he was handsome. On television, he was actually very handsome. And he was the overseer whenever we had a convention in Miami or anywhere on the coast there, a big convention. He was a public relations servant. That's what he's called.
Okay.
And this is the 1959 and workers at that convention. And I married Joe in 59, but this was uh, after the 58 assembly, the next year when there was assembly down in Florida. And I'm here. Let's see. I'm right there. I'm
Okay.
19, just before I married Joe. And some of these people came from Bethel, and they did that years ago, public relations department at big assemblies, and I would always work there because I could do the work. I could type
Yeah.
and do shorthand. But this man, Bob Mackey, his name was, and he was always public relations servant, brilliant man. And he would go to Bethel and for take a long vacation every year, and he'd go to Bethel and volunteer in Bethel's public relations department and help them to see what to do with advertising and something like that. So Joe and I got to be very good friends of theirs. Now, what I'm going to get to is why I said the older people would know him, is when the society used to put out cassette tapes of reading the Bible. You had two men read the Bible, and one was an English guy and the other one was an American. And Bob Mackey was the American. And if you have copies of those old tapes, I have them, and I can put Bob Mackey. He's long dead now, but I can put him on and hear him reading the Bible
Mm.
with an absolutely gorgeous voice. So you see, you can make lemonades out of lemon.
Yeah, for sure. I'm glad that he was able to do this.
Yeah. And
It's
and
it.
interesting, they were very close friends of Ray Franz and Cynthia. And when Ray was leaving the organization, I'm going to pop this in. It's a shocker. You're all going to be surprised. Um, when Ray left the organization, there was much more that he never told in Crisis for Conscience or his other book.
I'm waiting for that part with
Well,
anticipation.
he came down to, we were still living in West Palm Beach. Bob and Ginny moved to Tampa, Florida, and he was first of all, a congregation servant, then the elder arrangement. And but they were very, very old friends from up in Ohio, their parents on both sides and whatever. Um, so they knew each other for years and years. And anyway, Jenny called me one day, and I'm living, as I said, in West Palm, and they're living in Tampa. And she said, "You won't believe this, Barbara. You just won't." And our lives were Jehovah's Witnesses. We existed for Jehovah's
Yep.
Witnesses. And she says, she said, Ray and Cynthia were here. And you know what? She said, I don't know how to tell you this, but he tried to convert us to his religion. And I said, what in the world are you talking about? And she was trembling because she knew what this meant. She said, he believes that everybody goes to heaven. Jehovah's Witnesses, there isn't 144,000.
Wait, where was Ray at that time?
He was out of,
Oh, okay. Okay, because I'm a little bit confused. So he left Bethel, but he was still a witness.
Yeah, well, they put him out. He didn't.
Yeah, no, Bethel apparently he left on his own.
Mm,
No,
mm.
that's what he wrote in Crisis of Conscience that he left by himself.
No, they asked him to leave because of his beliefs, but he doesn't go into the book about that. Also, they were very annoyed with him because he was always preaching his stuff. And so in the last chapter, or just about the last chapter of Crisis of Conscience, he talks about being on um, when the governing body met. I think it was every Wednesday. It got to the point where he didn't say a word. He says he didn't say a word because they didn't want to hear from him. Ray was a very big proponent of studying the Bible. Very few people, when we got to Bethel, 1980s when they put him out. 82 is when we went in. Nobody talked about Ray. And Ray was over the
So he
translation
left in the
writing.
80, and then you came 2 years later.
Yeah.
Okay. For some reason, I thought you both served at the same time.
We lived near each other.
Ah,
They lived in Atlanta. We're only an hour and a half from Atlanta, and we've been to his house. And a woman gave him $30,000, and he bought a house there.
oh, wow. Back
These are
then, $30,000 was like, I don't know, like
things,
60 or more right now. Wow, that's a
see,
quite generous gift.
these are things that I happen to know a lot about the older congregations all those years. Those were my years. And we were so active about it all. I gotta say, we loved it. It was our world. So when Ginny called me and told me that, I was so shocked because he was teaching a new teaching. It didn't come all of a sudden. He was nursing this idea a while. One man told my husband they were walking home from parking the car. The society had a car lot, uh, and so they drop us off at our residences and where we lived at Bethel, and then the men would take the car and park it. This is especially on the weeknights like Thursday night, and so they would wait at the parking lot was always fenced in with, and you had a key to a lock. So when a person pulled up to the front, they would have to get out, open the lock, open the gate, go in and park the car. But if there was somebody who was there who was parking and leaving, they would hold it open for you. They tell them to stay and walk home with somebody because it's a dangerous area at night. So uh, Joe walked home with another Bethelite that night. And this guy was also a family man, had a son at Bethel like we did.
Hmm.
We had something in common, and we were a little different than most Bethelites. Uh, 85% of Bethelites back then were young men. That was a
Yeah.
statistic I was given. And so, but then what do they know, right? They need to be trained. They need to be taught. So they brought in family members like my husband, and he was the one who was teaching plumbing. They bought those buildings and those old buildings that needed to be replumbed. And I got stories about replumbing that'll make you laugh. And so he was walking with this fella and he was the one that brought up Ray France. Nobody would, it would never come out of his lips. They were so afraid to talk about him because they were afraid they were going to get caught up in this. It was a mess. And
Well, Ray wasn't the only one that left. There was a whole bunch of people that they got rid of.
you
Is that
know it
correct?
because they tried to get rid of one couple who we really know them well. And he was a branch overseer of Spain. And Ray was over the writing department. And so he brought that couple who the woman was actually raised in New York, and she married a new witness who was from Puerto Rico. And eventually they pioneered. They did so well. They went to Spain, and he was made the branch overseer. Well, Ray, they didn't want to leave Spain, and Ray made them leave and told them they had to come to Brooklyn. So they did, and they worked in translation services. So Ray, um, they were there about 6 months, and they didn't have much to do with Ray. He had a life of his own, and they had a life of their own. Just because you worked in the same department didn't mean that you were absolute close friends. So Schroeder, it was actually Schroeder who was the main person that wanted to get rid of Ray. And so this situation developed, and just what happened was that this couple from Spain were invited. Ray and Cynthia invited them to their room for a dinner. And that's the first time they ever were in that room. So they had a nice evening just talking and went back to their own room. And the next, I think I might have 2 days later, I interviewed this man. It's on the web somewhere. I interviewed him from Six Screens and Nestor and Tony Kulan, maybe 2 years ago or so. And he told part of the story. And so when other people found out that they went to Ray's room, then Schroeder got on this, and he came to Nestor and Tony's room and was cross-examining him and almost accusing them of being involved with the overthrow like Ray was. And so Nestor and Tony packed their bags and left the next day and left the organization. They didn't hang around. They were so appalled by what was going on, they left the organization. And I know that for a fact because he told us. They used to live here in this town for a year. There was a situation, nothing bad. It's just that they were looking for a place to live. They were in Florida, and we knew them, and we knew a house here that was available, approximately could be for a year, and they could see America. They really were Puerto Ricans, so to speak. They live in Puerto Rico now, but they told us the whole story. Also, I heard part of the story from someone else. Also, I studied with a woman when I was engaged to Joe in 1959. I met this woman, and when I go in door to door with another witness and pioneering. So this woman, she was waxing the floor, and the screen door, the main door was open. And this is Florida, but it was nice weather, and she had just the screen door closed. So when we came up to the door and we looked, we had to, when we rang the bell, you could see into the living room, and this woman was waxing the floor, and she's waxing herself out the front door. It's very comical because when she pushed the door open with her feet, she stood up, and there two of us were standing there. Well, she became a witness eventually. I always tell people back in those years, she backed into the truth. So anyway, so she has a little boy, and he's retarded, and her husband is a drug addict, and they're young. And so I had a Bible study with her, and in 6 months she was attending meetings. And then the little boy died, and the husband wanted to move away, and they moved off, and I never saw her again. So eventually her husband killed himself, and they lived in New York, mind you, in the city. She becomes a witness, and her little boy dies. And natural causes, because as I said, he was born retarded and he had grave problems, couldn't talk, couldn't walk. So she becomes a witness, and she's going to a Manhattan congregation. And who does she meet? But people who are running the organization who go to that congregation. So Don Adams is the president of Watchtower, Pennsylvania. He's a very, very, very influential man at Bethel. So she meets him and his wife and some of the others who are in the service department and everything. Then, so she's also about 4'8" in height. She's a little squirt. So she would come up to me, yeah, and she had
Wow. Very short.
she had a beautiful, beautiful speaking voice. And she really did. And it was very loud. You could hear her a mile away. For a little person, she had this marvelous voice, So there's a story everywhere that I can tell you about. So after her husband is dead and the little boy's dead, she's got a niece who lives upstate New York. And it's near IBM. And her niece runs a gas station. It's very, very rural, and she runs like a mom and pop gas station, and has groceries in it.
You're
So,
gonna lose me in all the details, Barb. So I'm trying to find a connection
oh,
between all
you're gonna
everything.
wait till you hear it. You won't believe the connection here, but it's true. So she's filling the key. She's working for her niece, and she fills the gas tank of cars coming in. Well, this
Yeah.
one guy comes in, and her name is Betty, and she's very attractive. Even she's really short, but very attractive, and he's very, very tall. So he keeps coming in for gas because he wants to get to know Betty, and he had a little sports car. He's a he works for IBM, and he's an architect for IBM.
Oh wow.
And you know what? They fall in love and they get married.
Oh, look at
And
that.
she converts him to the witnesses, and he becomes an elder eventually. And they live upstate New York. He's not a nobody. His background is extraordinary. His father designed the fabulous doors on I think it's a congressional building in Washington, D.C. It is extraordinary, and it's in the history books. It's so special. His father designed that.
Oh wow.
He was alive. So his background is architect in very important places, but he becomes an active witness, and eventually they sell out everything, and they build a boat, a big boat, and Chimerand or something. I'm close. It's got the two rudders underneath it, the runners, and so they go. He teaches her about although her background has she was raised in a place that she was near an ocean, and so they sell everything, and they built this boat, and they call on the island as witnesses. They're going island to island, and they're preaching out in the Caribbean. They did that for 3-4 years, and so they were so needed by the society. So we're at Bethel. This is 20 years later. We're at the in the dining room having supper. We rarely ever ate in the dining room at Bethel in the supper. We always ate in the room where I fixed something, a sandwich, and we go into the congregation or whatever. And so that one evening we decided to, for some reason, to eat there. And just before the prayer, Joe says to me, you have 10 at a table, even in the evening. And he says, I'll be back. He said, I got to go to the bathroom. So he disappears. He says, I'll come back here and then we'll go up to our room and we can go up together. So, which was just a nice thing. He didn't have to do it like that. But when he went to the bathroom, he passed main doors. Who was coming in those main doors but this couple? Joe had seen her the last time when I was studying with her and we were engaged. And that was like over 20 years before. Oh, God, maybe even 25. And so, and this man is behind her and he is like 6'10" or something. I mean, that's what they were, like this. And Joe was so shocked when he saw her, and she was different than everybody. She had that powerful voice, and she's this little body. And so he knew right away it was her as an older woman. So he comes back into the dining room, and of course the prayer was over and whatever. He said, "You will never know who I just met at the front door." And so they come to the door of the dining room and stand there. And I'm telling you, I was so shocked. So the oddest thing. And they were there. They were invited to be part of the Bethel family. He was an architect. And I was in architect department. I was in construction engineering department when I first went into Bethel. It was the second place I ended up when I was there. First place was a year, and then I was transferred into engineering. So he worked in the same department I worked in together. And then she was given a position somewhere. I can't even remember, but I think it wasn't a cleaning job. Most of the women that came in with smart men were put in cleaning, and they wouldn't last long, I'll tell you. The husbands were needed, but the wives couldn't stand it because most of the men who were very talented that the society needed, older men, I mean, they weren't that old, but if they had children, even the society would take them. But the wives actually ended up at cleaning.
Yeah.
And they never cleaned because their husbands were such good providers. They had a cleaning lady usually on the outside.
Yeah.
So if they lasted a year or so, well, Betty and Alan lasted 4 years until she got sick. And so the experiences that we had with them were absolutely remarkable. I can write a book. In fact, after they left Bethel and she recuperated, they were headed to England, and he was in some sort of a program and for architects. And while he was there, he wanted to search castles and things and look at it from an architect's eyes. So they invited Joe and I to go with them. So we took our vacation time at Bethel and we went to England with them. And we went to castles. We went to so many castles that the last one we went to, all over England, Joe said, I'm not getting out of this car. I don't ever want to see a castle again. But the fascinating part of this is Betty's background. She came from the lineage of, I think it was Queen Elizabeth. That was her way back in her background. And she knew her history. She very rarely ever spoke about it because she's a witness, so who cared, right? So we went to places that her ancestors were. It was a fascinating time. We stayed at the Bethel branch. Of course, they couldn't ordinary stay at the Bethel branch because they weren't Bethelites. But once you're a Bethelite, you could stay at any branch if you were traveling, you know. And we met the wonderful, wonderful witnesses at not only at Bethel, but we met them in our travels all over England and Scotland. So here we are we're poor folk actually, and we got a son at Bethel, and he got to go to all across Europe because he was in Bethel, and the whole bunch of Bethelites decided, like 4 or 5 Bethelites decided they wanted to see England and Scotland and some of the other countries. And the doctor who was at Bethel that was brought in had a family, and he had a son who was my son's age, and we knew the doctor from West Palm Beach. He was in our congregation and moved in while we were there. And my son went to school with their son as kids. And so here they are, the doctor and his wife and his, I think it was four kids. They're all at Bethel. And
So sorry to interrupt you, but I'm curious. Back in those days when you were a kid, how did the organization view higher education? Because you're talking about doctors, engineers, and
they were all
chiropractors.
converts. They were all
They're,
converts.
they were all converts, right? But
And
the
they finished
organization
schooling,
itself,
become
were they
witnesses.
discouraging going to school back in the day,
Yeah,
or
not really. We all thought Armageddon was coming in 5 minutes, so we didn't pursue that kind of thing. We weren't in it 50 years and realized that it didn't come and we're stupid. We have no vocation. It's just the circumstance. This is a 1984 a Watchtower. I was I went there in 82. We were so thrilled in 84 because that was when the society said the scripture in the Bible was fulfilled. When
can I
nations,
show it? I didn't see. I just saw the very top. Can you
okay,
show me the?
okay, I'm sorry. I get it.
There you go. Okay, 1914 marked year. Why? Okay,
Okay,
and what did that watchtower say?
it is April 1st, 1984. Okay, so
Okay.
look at this one in the same volume.
Oh, I remember this one.
Okay,
Focal point. Yeah.
and
I was a
guess
kid when that
and
came
guess
out.
what? May 1st, 1984.
In you. Yeah.
You see, that's when the United Nations announced that peace.
Oh yeah.
You
The
remember? That
peace
peace.
year or something like that, right?
That's right. When nations say, the Bible says, when nations say it's a year of peace and security, then sudden destruction will come upon you. Well, the United Nations, I remember where I was sitting. I was at Bethel only like a year and a half, and they made the announcement that year, and they put it in all over this watchtower that it was it. And so I remember sitting in my desk and engineering, thinking this was the year it was going to be all over. So it wasn't over, was it? So we were all so excited about this, and but uh, that's a long time ago, and we hung in there. But they have the responsibility of misleading us. The United Nations was in the middle of something not scriptural, and they weren't claiming that. They were seeing world peace. And so,
Barb, as much as I agree with you that it was all false, but do you think they believed it themselves?
well,
Because we were all preaching it, we were all teaching it to others.
well,
So
guess what we
whoever,
went through
who,
1975 and
right,
nothing
whoever
happened.
we were preaching to, these people could say to us, "Hey, you guys misled me. You guys lied to me." Right? But we believed it. So you, especially knowing these people at the very top, Do you think they believed it themselves?
And they heard that message. And let me show you the other article in here. Same volume. This one, apostates make a big deal on this on the, like me, on the internet, right?
Oh yeah, that one. Yeah, a big one. Yeah.
Yeah,
The
same
generation that
volume.
will not pass away. And they're all dead. Everybody on this
Yes,
picture.
everybody in there is dead. And I knew most of them.
You knew most of them, huh?
I could pick it up. In fact, there's one man here who was at Bethel and his wife, and he was an older gentleman and he was an elder, and he had a woman in New York City. He had a mistress in New York City.
Oh wow.
His picture is in here. And so I have seen it all. I'm telling you, it's still stuck in with this. He goes back, he comes from Tampa, Florida, and he goes back with his wife. Oh, years and years later, when we were visiting Tampa, seeing somebody, Joe asked about him. And the man told, it was one of Joe's, Joe came from Tampa when he was a little boy. And so he knew this other man for years and years. So they're entertaining us while the little time we're there. So Joe asked about this guy that was at Bethel and whatever. And he said, oh, he's been disfellowshipped. He said he had a mistress here. And so, you know, he didn't learn from the New York thing, you know. And so everybody has a story to tell. I could tell you.
Wow.
And well, anyway, going back to Alan and Betty, and I'll go back to Ray France. So eventually, they left Bethel because of her illness, and they were visiting in Florida. They actually settled in Central Florida, and they were visiting a congregation on the East Coast because they knew somebody and they wanted to
That was
see
Ray or it was
Ray and Ray, France, and Cynthia. And
Cynthia,
when
yes.
they left Bethel, and so the Alan and Betty settled also in Central Florida. And so they knew Ray. They knew Ray for many years before. So they came to Boca Raton, no, Boynton Beach. They came to Boynton Beach, Florida, to visit, and they stayed and went to a book study. And Ray and Cynthia visited that book study too when Alan and Betty were visiting the area. And Betty let me know, and Alan talked with Joe about it. And Ray was telling people at the book study in front of Alan and Betty about everybody going to heaven. So we have two sources for it. And if you read the end of Crisis of Conscience with knowledge, you'll see that there's more to the story.
Right.
When he says nobody will, Ray was known for, and I mentioned before about the man that was walking with Joe from the parking lot. He told Joe, he said, if you want to know anything, if you got personal problems here at Bethel, he said, you go see Ray France. He's a walking Bible encyclopedia. Of all the governing body, he's the only one that can spout scriptures.
I mean, the
And
way he wrote both his books, and I studied his books. I didn't read them, I studied them. Like, if he quoted a scripture, I'm like, I want to make sure he's not misleading me. Let me check the scripture. I checked the references, I checked everything he wrote very diligently. I'm like, oh, I was very impressed.
well,
Right,
good
so,
for you. Because there's another story here I tell very infrequently. In fact, one of my interviews was a live interview and wasn't too long ago. And I told this woman who was interviewing me, I said, I'll tell the story about Ray France. And it wasn't this one. And so I told her, she said, I'm not going to put that on. She said, everybody loves Ray France. And she said, that they are not going to appreciate that. And so, I don't do this because I don't like him. I liked him. And like I said, we've been to their house. I was
Yeah.
sitting next to him at dinner one time, and it was 8 of us. And then I'm a slow eater. I'm a big talker. That's why I'm a slow eater. And so I like to have a lot of fun. And we always do have fun with the other witnesses who are sitting there, you know. We have a lot of experiences. Ray and Cynthia knew the same people. We knew the same people they did. So anyway, everybody went into the dining room except me and Ray. I was still eating the main course. He was on dessert, but he was sitting right next to me. And my profession is cost accounting. And so I was curious about something. So I turned to him and I said, and we're all out of Bethel. And so I said, hey, Ray, does the governing body every month get a balance statement and income statement? And he said, he didn't even look at me. He just looked straight ahead. No. And he got up and went in. He wouldn't even discuss it. He knew better. He knew better because there was a lot. I caught problems in that because that was my background. And there were people at Bethel who were stealing from Bethel. That'd be part of my. I'll be sitting here for at least 2 years telling you, well, this I'm telling you, you can't be around thousands of people and not have experiences.
No, of
And
course.
and his book, in fact, recently I proved without a shadow of a doubt when I said something else about Ray to a friend, a new friend, really. And I said, I can prove to you 100% that this happened. I said, because I'll prove it from his book. And I took him through the book, and sure enough, I knew what I was saying about. And in fact, Ray knew what I was talking about. When Joe and I, after we were at their house for dinner that one night, and we were coming back. This is before, maybe 5 years before Ray died. And so I talked to Ray about the child abuse. He actually told him when I went forward with the man that I did about child abuse. Um, a reporter, I think that was after Dateline, and then the reporter got a hold of Ray and asked him if the child abuse material and information was true. And he said, no, it wasn't true. He said, I never had a case in my life that was child abuse. Well, that's true.
So Raymond said that he didn't have one case.
He never had one case. Well, neither did Joe. Joe was an elder for me. I don't even know how many years, 40, 50, 60, I don't know. And he never had one case. And when he found out from me, because I stumbled on all of this at Bethel, and then I was working with the Awake editor, and on this issue, and I said, I would like to tell Joe. He said, you can tell Joe, but he said nobody else. And Joe was so tired though in the evening when he came in from work, he would fall asleep with me talking. But he understood it. But Joe never had a case. And he wondered about that. And in his resignation letter, which is on one of my websites, and he points out why. Because he said he never suspected that any Jehovah's Witness would do anything like that. We lived in another world in our head that everybody was,
Yeah.
except a few
Well,
bad.
we didn't even accept the fact that people would have sex outside marriage, right? Like if anybody would find out, then the consequences were very quick. So
Right.
the idea that somebody would do this to a child was just like, no, that stuff happens in the world, not
Well,
here.
in a discussion, he said when we would have a meeting and it was a couple with children and they were having a lot of trouble with the children, he said, I never suspected that it was child abuse. He said, I'll talk to the parents and they'd bring their rebellious kids. And he said, if I had known there was such a thing going on, I would have talked to the kids. That is
Who
what
said that? Raymond?
my husband.
Oh, your husband. Okay.
Because my husband never had a child. He said, I never asked a kid. We just assumed the kids were rebellious. And he
Mm.
says, after all of this broke, he said, we were finding out that it was the father.
That's the worst case if he's actually the father. I think in my head.
And so he said, how would you even suspect that
You can't.
part of an
You
active
can't.
witness? So
Unless you have a reason to come up with that, there is no way you could figure it out. You're not gonna go around the Kingdom Hall and ask kids, "Hey, is your father abusing you?" There's no way, right?
that's apparently what Ray dealt with too. He never thought to ask. But it was interesting with him, though, when we would be visiting, and always the visits were planned. I mean, we never just popped in. There was always a reason for the visit. So uh, Cynthia always brought up Bethel. She wanted to know how so and so was, somebody she loved when she was at Bethel, and a friend of mine who I worked with, a woman I worked with, her husband is at the top of headquarters now. But back then they were missionaries to Colombia and they were brought to Brooklyn. And so she alerted me to some of the idiosyncrasies of the background of like how the men thought, and the classic teachings at Gilead. That subject never came at all. I'm if you want to do more interviews with me, I will do it, and I will tell your audience stuff that I told a little bit to a Spanish group that a little more than I had ever spoken to, and about some of this stuff. And
Uh,
just the other day, someone put on the internet that they were told that I said that there was ritual abuse at Bethel, and that I said this or I said that. And so as soon as I saw it, I got right on there and I said, this wasn't, I had a Spanish translator. And I said, I never said that. I said exactly what I will always say, that, yeah, we had a big basement at Bethel in the Towers building. It was connected onto the other buildings underground. And there were rooms there, and there was a tremendous tunnel. So you don't have to come up on the street
yeah.
to go from one building to the next. But I said, I never saw ritual abuse there and wouldn't even, it was a big laundry down there and storage
Yeah.
rooms.
You know,
I said, it's a Spanish translation. That somebody misunderstood what I said. So that's,
the stories that people create are absolutely crazy. There was a story in Poland that was going all around Poland that the Jehovah's Witnesses are mixing blood. Okay, that was the code name, and you know what it meant? It meant that we're having sex orgies. And I was wondering why, because what happened back then, witnesses were under ban, so they couldn't have kingdom halls. They were all meeting in secrecy, right? And then would invite people, but they had to be careful who to invite because they could get in trouble if word would spread out that they have meetings. So most houses, like my grandma's house where they had meetings, had only two rooms, kitchen and bedroom, right? And then you would see that people would gather first in the kitchen. So you see a light in the kitchen, and then you would see a light in the bedroom where everybody went into the bedroom to have a meeting. And then because of we were worried that we would get caught, they would all close the curtains, right?
Oh, yes.
So then the story starts coming up, right? And they would come up with a name, and and this is what Jehovah's Witnesses are doing. And the legend, this myth started spreading like crazy. The Jehovah's Witnesses are mixing blood, which means they have sex orgies in people's bedrooms, which is crazy, absolutely crazy when you think about it. But it became
Well,
so popular, most people actually believed it. Most people believed it, which
well,
was
maybe that's the case there, but I'm going to tell you, I'm going to bust your bubble. Uh, Somebody asked me just this past week, what happened to the book study? On Tuesday night, we had the book study. They wanted to know, do they still have that? And I said, at people's homes, and I said, no, they don't have that. They have it combined at the meeting on Thursday. They did have this kind of a book study for half an
yeah, yeah,
hour. They had the other, whether what they do now, I don't know. But I said, she said, well, why did they move it from there? I said, well, there was all kinds of rumors as why they got rid of the Tuesday night, and it usually was Tuesday night. Why they got rid
yes.
of it, and but the fact of the matter, as I was told, is that after the book study, too many people were staying like once a month. Uh, they'd have coffee and cake. And so it was a nice get together.
Yeah,
We did
we've
it
had that
ourselves.
too.
Yeah. But what's happening is that the kids would go play, or go somewhere and play. And there was some other kid, maybe was older, and there was molestation. There was too much molestation.
Really? You think
That's
that's why?
uh-huh. That's why they moved it out of Tuesday on Tuesday night. I never
Well, I
heard
don't know
of
officially why
molestation.
they did it. I don't think that's the official version either. I thought that a lot of people were questioning some of the teachings, and in a small group, it was easier to share their doubts. And a lot of those groups had no elders, just a ministerial servant running it, right? When I was growing up, there was like two
Well, that's a
elders, right?
different
So
story there, but I knew of not a lot of cases, but I knew of some that did take place after the book study. In fact, uh, a big trial here in the States a number of years ago, not that far back. I'm not going to say where it was because you recognize it. That happened there, and
really,
and the man built the house specially for recreation after the book study. And so the kids were all going down in there. And of course, some of the people who were going down there to see their kids, it was all pre-planned. And that's what this one case
but
was. In fact,
that's
I got a
that's
file folder full of stuff on that case.
but that
So
usually like
yeah,
from what I've heard, molestation usually happens one on one. It doesn't happen in a group setting.
yeah, there was a number of people involved. That's not true. I mean, that's why I'm talking because we who don't do those things don't have any idea how perpetrators work. And
It's
they
very
come
difficult
into
for
this
me to even
organization to get
grasp
it.
this concept. It's
Yeah.
it's
I'm sorry, that's the way it is.
it's
I
sickening.
have transcripts of a lot of cases. I have thousands of pages of cases on my one website. In fact, I just got an approval from two companies out of uh, your country here, journalists from Canada who wrote me and asked me to answer 8 questions to do with child abuse and my part in this. He sent me the questions, and he said by the he's November 1st or 4th, I think that's when I got it. And then he says I have to have it by the end of the year. So the last day of the last year, I sent off my answers, and it got approved, and it's for people to read. And it's a website. You have to go to my website to see that, watchtowerdocuments.org. And it's on the front page. And the journalist wrote the introduction. I didn't have anything to do with the introduction, all about me. And then I had answered the 8 questions. And now what it does is it tells people the new ways of activists like us, how we deal with this, the new type of thing, how we deal with the, child abuse on our websites. So that was the purpose of this. So, but there's so many things you don't know. When I was at Bethel, I was on the phone. The Harry Poloyan, the Wake editor, and also 2 other
So,
elders.
sorry, before you go there, so what was your role at that point in Bethel? You said you were on the phone. Like you were answering when people called?
Writing department. I wasn't
You
on
were
the
in the
phone
writing department.
regularly. If the call came in and was about child abuse, or I made the call because somebody wrote a letter, and
Okay.
or I was asked to call. Sometimes an elder would call, and the 2 or 3 elders that knew about in the writing department knew about the problem. They would automatically send it my way because it would be a victim or a woman. And I was the only mother. That was the reason that they did this. There were some good men they're all dead, but they were good men. And they broke this. If it wasn't for them, it would have never gotten done. And he said, I'm your only mother in the writing department. And we can't even talk about this to people. Harry told me, he
So,
said,
so
if I
you
was to
were
tell
like
my
writing
wife,
articles for Watchtower in the Wake, or what were you writing?
oh, I was working on the Proclaimers book.
Proclaimers book. Oh wow.
Yeah, I did the 30th chapter, most of the information on the Constitution and Jehovah's Witnesses. And I did
Constitution.
miscellaneous, or I did the one on page 44. There's a box there, and I was asked to prove that Jehovah had a channel. This is their words. Prove that Jehovah had a
It just
channel
simply ask question. Find the proof that the Jehovah has a channel and that we are
from,
the
from
channel.
Jesus Christ to Russell. I worked 6 months on that. That's a major teaching of Jehovah's Witnesses
Yes.
or the Bible students. And it came into that because it was already coming in from England. United Brethren, George Storrs, the number of these men who were leading, eventually it came out of this Seventh-day Adventists, but then into the Second-day Adventists, and that was where Russell learned most of his stuff from Barber, and that was Second-day Adventists.
Yes.
So I had to study this for 6 months. They even got me books out of Europe where the heretic movements were. And some of the books were translated into English out of, especially out of Romania, a tremendous heretic movement. And then during Russell's time, or before he really got going, there was a big movement out of England with the United Brethren. I can't think of right offhand. I usually know Darby's movement was coming into the United States. And so that's how, to Russell. Russell also wasn't alone. I got so much stuff to say on that. You would never, ever run out of interviewing me because I worked on that and I had,
So,
and
uh,
there was no channel, and they acknowledged it in an off, strange way on page 44 in a box in the Proclaimers book,
so
which they
let
don't print
me ask you
anymore.
this: since you did so much research, and obviously the research was done outside of Jehovah's Witness publications, right? Because you had to find ways to prove that this is the truth based on other books and
Yeah,
theories.
by dates, mostly by dates. What was
Yeah.
going
Did you
on?
ever doubt? Because you obviously came across stuff that was contradicting what Jehovah's Witnesses
Yeah,
believing.
no, I didn't know.
You didn't doubt, huh?
You know why? Because I was okay with change. When they said Jehovah is new light, I said, well, that makes sense. He didn't want them to know. But then when I started to really get into all this after I left the organization, and uh, let me tell you, you know, I have it hanging here. Uh, you see all the books all
Yes.
over this place, and there's more upstairs. I have books on the Reformation. Those years during the Reformation was years of all of this kind of stuff. Jesus returned. And so those words that are used by Jehovah's Witnesses, like new light, that's old light. I mean, that's old words. When I go into my books on the Reformation, there they are. The same words that were known to me as a JW, and nobody used them, is all a rerun. I call Jehovah's
Mhm.
Witnesses a rerun religion from the Reformation. It's the same words. I give you. It's a good thing I'm a big talker. Otherwise, I wouldn't. Somebody else would drop over from talking this long. But I'm so used to it. But it's so interesting. See,
Yeah.
I love uh, information. I say I talk a lot, but I'm interesting. So that's how I get by this. And so then I say I'm an information pusher longer. That's all I am. I'm not here to be somebody because it's not truth that sets you free. Jesus said truth sets you free. If you look up the word truth, you might find something different. It's subjective. Truth is subjective.
Of course.
I say that it's not the truth that sets you free, it's the facts that set you free. Keep looking. You'll find it when historically. I mean, I was so dumbfounded when I learned not that many, a year ago, on some of the stuff I've learned. The Enochian movement, the word Watchtower. Why did Russell pick in 1879 the word
Well,
Watchtower?
I don't know. Tell me. I'm curious.
Okay, I'll tell you. Thank you for asking. The Enochian movement is 14th century. It was a guy by the name of John Dee. He was Queen Elizabeth's spy. Okay, he came up with this movement. Now I'm. This is all kind of new to me as of about a year and a half. Somebody out there in our group is an expert on this, and but she spends all her time, and rightly so, to open all this stuff up. And also, I know much more now because I subscribe to an organization that people who are graduating universities or there's somebody in the right in the world of writing have donated their material that they wrote on maybe to get out of college as their essay or whatever. So there are a number of people who have nothing to do with Jehovah's Witnesses who have written on the Enochian movement. Enoch, right? In the Bible, in the Genesis, how about I believe it was his father was Methuselah. And so out of that Bible account in the 14th century, they built a religion out of this. And so uh, that was a primary belief system around natural elements and angels, the worship of angels. And so you start reading this, get on the computer and ask for essays on Enochian.
But what
Ism.
does that have to do with Watchtower, with that name Watchtower?
Because one of the four elements in this religion is called Watchtower. And You have to see the whole picture. You have to read on this whole religion. And so also George Soros was a best buddy of Charles Taze Russell. And they were all searching it because there was a resurgence of Enochianism uh, about started maybe 30 years before Russell came out in 1879. And George Storrs, he wrote a book called Watchtower. He died the year, and he lived only like 3 blocks from Russell in Brooklyn Heights, and they were friends and students of all of this stuff because everything to them was the return of Jesus Christ. So there was this movement into Enochianism. So Storrs wrote a book on the his viewpoint and all of what I didn't read his book. I got plenty of stuff of George Soros, but I don't have time to read the dang stuff.
No, no,
And
no.
I'm
We're already touching upon so many topics, but so you're thinking that he chose this subject because of the
George
influence.
Soros, where he got it from, we know where he got it from, but Russell got it from George Storrs. George Storrs' book, and he died the year 1879. Russell came out with the Watchtower, and Russell names his magazine Zion's Watchtower. So he makes it connect up to Israel. And Jesus Christ all puts this all together, and you can start reading the first Watchtower, which I have all of that, and it starts making sense to you because you see where they're coming from. So if
So
you
many people say, "Oh, this is because Russell was a Mason,
no, you
and
were
it
never
comes
a
from
Mason, and
he
I
was
would
never
go
a
to
Mason."
my
I don't
death.
believe that either, right? At least I didn't see enough evidence. There was
I
this
know this is
pyramid and the eye on top of the pyramid and right next to his grave and stuff like this, but
I know this is off the topic, but it's so simple to explain. Very easy. To be a Mason, you have to believe in immortality of the human soul, and you have to believe in God, a deity.
right.
And Russell never believed in the immortality of the human soul. Never. I have so much of Russell's writings. I have everything of Russell's
But
writings.
Russell himself was planning to go to heaven,
Yeah,
so kind of he
because
believed that there is some sort of
they didn't call it the 144,000. It wasn't precise when Russell was coming up, you know. It was they had a name, I can't think of what it is right now, for the movement of those who went to heaven. And see, they expected heaven 82. In 79, he married Mrs. Russell, and why he married her was fascinating. And and so 82, they both of them were going to heaven, but it wasn't heaven where God was. It was around the earth. They were going to be invisible around the earth, choosing that I got it, elect class. That was
oh,
so that is a whole nother topic. You know, it is so fascinating. History is anyway to me. And Russell's story, and I'm working on Russell's story. I've been working on it for 20 years. My
wow,
story and other stuff that's on the internet don't necessarily meet.
right.
A lot
No,
of
I know there's a lot of things that you people write and they color things too, right? They over exaggerate or they don't know everything accurately, so they put their perspective. So it's good to talk to somebody who has so much information, so much research, and so many years of experience yourself. So
it's so fascinating though. You know, I don't do this to show off. It's people junk. I call it people junk. And
yeah.
people are fascinating.
And some people don't want to know. Like I remember,
Yeah.
even as a witness, I went to San Diego and I went to see Beth Sarim, right? And I took pictures of that place and I sent it to my family and I said, "Do you guys recognize this place?" and they didn't want to know. They're like, oh, I send them, where it's from or whatever. And one sister is like, oh, where'd you find this from? Like, what is this, right? And I'm like, well, that's in our book, in our publication. I remember this picture, right? And she was all upset because I quoted, instead of quoting a Watchtower, I quoted Wikipedia, right? What this house represents. And she was not happy about it. She was like, well, how dare I quote Wikipedia instead of Watchtower? And I'm like, it didn't say anything wrong. It just said who built it, when, and for what, right? Like
Yeah,
it was just
he
weird. But
was.
some people don't want to know because it's like they're whitewashing the history. And if something is inconvenient, like Betsarim is very inconvenient for them, it's quite embarrassing, if you ask me.
Well,
They don't want to discuss it,
they,
right?
they, they were just people, and they had imaginations just like people have today. There's no
Exactly.
difference. Some of the stuff they really, really thought was right. When I went there, and I was in the garage, I was with and two elders and their wives and me, and
Oh, so you were there when you was working? No, you couldn't be.
I was there. After I left Bethel, I was still a witness, and so I had to go to California for another reason. And while I was there, this is what they did. The society did not want all these people going by Bethsarim. And so they told the elders in the area not to give out the address. So I had to get special permission from one man to be able to get the address so we could go see it. Well, I was still a researcher. I have never said this to you. A few people know this, but I was a researcher for the Watchtower and have a paper, signed paper. I was employed by the Watchtower, no money though, for 4 more years after I left there. I was a researcher for this house. I wrote some of these articles from this room that was in the Awake.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I had to go out there, like I said, for another reason. So I've tracked it down and got the address. And so we went there. And so there was a lot of motorcycles in the big driveway that goes up kind of a hill. And so uh, I said, there's people up there. So I said, I'm really, I, I act like I'm not shy, but I really am. If there's a guy there, I would rather have a man go and meet. Not because I'm afraid of a man. I'm not that. I just think that you guys are on the same channel, you know, man to man. So I said to one of the elders in the car, so you go and see if we can get a tour. And he did. And so there was about maybe four motorcycles, and they were in the garage, and the owner was Chinese of Bethsarim. So he gave he said tell because they told about me, and the elders said. So this man says, tell her to come up and let me talk to her. So I went in the garage with the two elders and motorcycle guys and the owner. And so we talked. And he told me that Rutherford was buried, was under my feet. And I said, no, that's not true. And he said, absolutely, it is true. As he's not buried where you all say he is. He was buried under our feet in this garage. And so then he gave me some other details. And I said, we'd sure like to see the inside of the house. He said, well, go in and look. I said, you're going to tour us, right? No, just go in and go floor to floor, go look at everything you want.
Oh, wow.
Oh, so I have some pictures of that, but it was
Oh, that's
very
cool.
fascinating. And I don't have
I
them.
I I met the new owner,
Yes.
because he actually came out of the house. I didn't have a chance to talk to him, and I was a little shy too. Right? I didn't want to bother him. He was rushing to work. But he's not Chinese. No, he looks like
When was
American
that?
made.
How many years ago?
Oh, about 10 years ago. At least 10 years ago.
And mine was probably more like 20 before.
Yeah.
It was before Dateline. That was 2002. Because I left the organization in 98, in the beginning of 98. I didn't go to the
Crazy time.
memorial, so that told everybody I was out.
Yeah.
And when I called up Bethel, I used to call every week to check in for what I was supposed to do. And the one man I always talked to, he was at Bethel for 40 years. Just shows you the mentality or the way people think. And so I told him I was leaving the organization, and I was, he knew all about the child abuse too. And so I said, I was Catholic, and at least I have to say, when I went into church, there was reverence. But I said, there's no reverence for God in a Kingdom Hall. There's no feeling of reverence. It's all organization.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what he said? You're absolutely right. And he stayed there till he died. And I don't blame him. Where was he and his wife going to go? They were old, and they did work for the organization. So the organization gave him he got a new car every year from a woman who
Oh, wow.
he was very wealthy, and she had met him and his wife years and years before, and so she bought him a new car every year. There were perks,
Yeah. Barb, let me ask you about the governing body, because I think a lot of people, because they don't know them personally, they judge them pretty harshly, especially after they left, and they think they're all PMOs for some reason. They're all just masterminds, and they're all lying, and they're all misleading people for their own power and money, and they're just manipulating everybody on purpose. What's the real truth behind the curtain?
Well, I made a list of the governing body that I knew when I was there. All right. So we have Lloyd Berry. He was the overseer of writing. Very fine man from, where was he from? I can't think. What the heck? I can't think. I know where he's
It
from.
doesn't matter where he's from.
But anyway, he was the only one of the governing body members that he was college educated. Okay. Jack Barr was from England. Dan Sidlick, Polish.
Yep.
Yes. He and I, we laughed ourselves silly most of the time when we get together. In fact, Joe loved Polish jokes, and Joe was not Polish, but he loved Polish jokes, and he loved to tell my mother Polish jokes to see her go. Oh no, Joe, don't say that. So Dan Sidlick and I, we were. It was the funniest thing. But he's Bohemian Polish, which is a little different than just ordinary Polish. I'm not Bohemian. And Dan was definitely Bohemian. But funny, I got some stories I can tell you. The audience will
We'll keep it on the
laugh.
next time, maybe.
Yeah. Ray France, of course I know.
Yeah.
Fred France, oh, I know him. And Henschel, Swingle, Jarris. I'm doing something.
Wasn't Jairus also Polish?
Polish,
Yarach, right?
Polish,
Polish.
Jarris, and I'm ashamed to say that he's Polish
Yeah,
because
he
this man,
was he was not a nice man. That's what I heard. He was
I
quite
don't know.
tough.
I think he was mentally ill. I like to say that because I don't want to say anything worse. Barber, who is funny, a little retarded, I think. These are men who were there for ages and ages. Swingle was funny, and he was married. He married a woman before he was governing body, but he was on the corporation, involved with the corporation as a director. Those 300 corporation directors, And so Swingle was absolutely hysterical. I was doing research in his office, and his office had a huge cabinet in there made in the Watchtower's, one of Watchtower's uh, departments. And it was obviously beautiful. And the last person that was in that office that used those cabinets was somebody very important at the Bethlehem. As a Bethlehem, he was the accountant over there, all the accountant. And Swingle came over to me as I was going through big. 1945 was the last time anybody was in that thing. That's what I was told. And so I'm taking out all of this stuff, sitting on a low stool, and looking through it. And Swingle comes over, and he apparently doesn't have anything to do, and he gets the job. He didn't have the job because he fit the job. That's where the man who had it before him was removed from Bethel, so they didn't know who to put in there. Say Swingle did. So every time I go in there, he wasn't doing anything. He's sitting at his desk, and so he took. So this one day, he got his wallet out and he walked over and he says, "I got something funny." And he read me this letter, and it was from Rutherford. And Rutherford wrote the guy who was at one time very powerful. We're all talking about in the 30s and 40s. And this guy, he was over the Awake or whatever, Consolation. And Swingle had this letter from Rutherford, who he wrote to this man. And in those old Wake magazines, there was so many articles on hemorrhoids. And it really is so, because I've been through them all, I think, in all these years. And for some reason, you get this in the back of the Awake, they'd have Watching the World be on hemorrhoids. And so the letter that Rutherford wrote, the guy who was head over this, and his name escapes me right now. And it says from Rutherford to the man, he says, "I am so sick and tired of reading in the Awake about hemorrhoids. I never want you to do another article in the Awake on hemorrhoids." The Swingle's reading this to me as I going through. I had so much fun going through things that were not opened, probably 30, 40 years, that nobody ever looked through. That's how come I discovered that the head of the president of the Watchtower was not Charles Taze Russell.
Well, obviously the guy had problem with assholes.
See, that's why I look back. I have a lot of interesting things. I read stories that when people were sent from Gilead over to the other countries, they had to report back on their experiences.
Yeah.
And some of the experiences were absolutely hysterical, but they were
But
dead.
how do you see the governing body members? That's what I'm curious
Oh,
about.
they're so versatile. That's what I'm trying to say. You got Genghis. I would avoid, I'd walk up 10 flights of stairs before I get in an elevator with Genghis. I'll tell you why. It wasn't anything unethical or immoral. He would say the same things over and over again. And it always was a question about the creative days. And sometimes you have 8 people in a small elevator, and there's Genghis next to, in front of the guy in the elevator. And that means we all have to go like this. And he's asking about the creative day number 4. What did they make on number 4? So after a while you get to laugh because they were.
It was testing people's knowledge.
Yeah, but year after year after year after
Oh
year,
my gosh, that's annoying. Yeah.
Klein
Did I lose you?
was he was really odd, but that's because he lived in another generation than we did. If I knocked on his door usually he was doing nothing because he was so old. But he
Yeah.
had made his pitch years before, and a lot of the things he was responsible for were not true. It came to him in the night, and he would give a talk on maybe if he had the breakfast the next morning or that week, he would be ruling over breakfast comments. And he did one thing absolutely not true. When I go through the research on what he said, sometimes I use the yearbook and I find out what was said about this certain issue in the yearbook, because he would say to the family, "Oh, back then, so many years ago, this is the way we believed it. But the other night, I had this dream," and you sit there and go, "Oh my gosh." You say, "Well, he's old, but he was kind of loony even when he was young, you know." And I say that with tongue in cheek because, um, loony is as loony does, and it's all really subjective.
No, of
So you
course,
got to be
of course.
careful
I'm just
because
curious if they if they actually believe it, because in my opinion
yeah,
they
they
do.
did. They believed it.
They
As it
believed it,
came,
right?
as it came. Klein is the one that came up with 1975 didn't happen. So he's the one that wrote the article, which he didn't write anymore as that when I was there. But he wrote that one where he compared 1975 to tacking out in a sailboat. And reason I know that is because uh, long before I went to Bethel, I had this friend, and she was she even went to school for to be captain of a sailboat, and she had her license and everything. And when she read that article, she she told Joe and I, she said, "He don't know what he's talking about. That's not tacking." And he says, uh, what he was referring to is back and forth. That was, and they come
Mhm.
up with the 1975. Harry Fuloyan went into, he told me this. He said, when they came up with the Freddie France, and I've told this on other programs, and you can't forget something like this. Uh, when he was made president, because the guy before him died, uh, Harry was so aggravated because he'd been in Bethel for 40 years. He was a graduate of the best university in the United States. And he was so annoyed. And he says to Lloyd Berry, who overseer of the department, and he says, "How in the world could you put Freddie France in as the over the governing body, the president of the governing body? He's the one that came up with the 1975 teaching, and 500 people left the organization because of Freddie France." And he said, "And you guys made him president?" So
So he was the one that was pushing that date. I'm
they,
wondering how did the governing body feel after 1975, because that was a huge blow to them. And
they just go out and go do their business, don't talk more about it. They talk amongst themselves. And on one particular case, you know, um, uh, I've told some of these stories a few times, uh, and maybe I shouldn't even repeat them. But uh, Rick Farron, he was Loesch. Loesch was governing body Loesch. He was at a weekend years and years ago, and Rick was a very active elder, and so Loesch spent the weekend at Rick's house, it was a zone visit type of thing. It wasn't just a visit to Rick. And so Rick was claimed to be of the anointed, and he was pioneering and working, had a family, and he was very dedicated. And Loesch saw all that. And so Loesch gave the talk on Saturday night. So Loesch says to him, you need to come to Bethel, and I will arrange a special tour for you. So that's what Rick did. And he recounts all this on his program a long time ago. And he sits there in front of the desk, and there's a Bible on the desk, and it's new. It looks new. Well, Rick was always thinking of witnessing, so he brought his witnessing bag with him, and he had the Bible, a Bible, New World Translation in it. So Rick says, I'm with a governing body member. I have a lot of questions about in the Bible that I can't get answers to, not critical, just historical or something. He said, I want more information. I decided, let me ask Loesch. And while we're sitting here, Loesch never picks up his Bible and apologizes. This is what I remember from the story. He apologizes. He says, governing body, we don't have time to read the Bible. And he said, so I can't answer those questions. He said, see, look at my Bible. And it was new. And so Loesch made an appointment for Sidlick to meet Rick. And so he was, so anyway, Loesch tells Rick, after the tour you're going to you'll have lunch. It's made arrangements for you. Then we're going to go to see Dan Sidlick. Why would he take him to Dan Sidlick? I knew right away when I heard the story. You don't have to be a genius. You just have to be a Bethel for a while, and you know how all these procedures work. So, Rick gets the tour, has his lunch, goes back to Loesch's office, and Loesch tells him, we can't visit to talk to Dan. He's got something else to do. So there went Rick's visit. And so he finished up with his tour and left. So the next time after I heard that a few years back, I said to Rick privately, and Rick knows I tell people this, and I said, that was exactly the time that they were trying to find another member for the governing body. And I said, I know that they had you, and Loesch was going to recommend you.
Oh, wow.
The criteria. I said, look you could have brought your family in here. And of course I think some of the kids were gone or older. And I said, you were pioneering, you were working, you had a wonderful wife. Everything was just, you were in the right ballpark for consideration. And Dan Sidlick is personnel. And in fact, when Joe and I went there, and they decided immediately, when they found out what Joe was doing for a living, we got an invitation, and we didn't even ever ask. I mean, it's if you have what they want, they go after you. And so Rick said, you gotta be kidding. I said, no. I said, it was common knowledge amongst our people where we were that they were looking for another governing body member. And of course, we lost out on Greenleaf, who's a molester, and also Chike. I can't even remember his name, Chike or Chicky or whatever. He was gay.
Oh, wow.
Nobody made any big announcements about
The
that.
governing body member was gay?
He had to be, because when he went right back when they removed him. He said he implied that he was getting old, and he went. They sent him back to because he came from the English branch, and his roommate he had the same roommate for eternity. And when he was asked to be governing body, they brought him over to the States. And then when they asked him to leave, and of course he was in good standing. He just had some problems. He goes back to England. They give him an outside room, from what I remember. An outside. He didn't live in the branch. And guess who his roommate was? The same man that he was living with all those many, many years before. And so, they discovered this about him, and they, they after a while they're all friends,
Yeah.
and so they kind of protect each other. I can tell you stories, and I'm going to put together a story. It's going to take me probably, if I can get the time to do it, it take me about 2 weeks because I got most of the information. I'm going to put a doozy together, and I shouldn't even say who I'm going to do it about. And it just so happens that we know the facts on that, and I'm not the only one that knows. So, but we're all getting old. Most of us are dying, and so these stories will never get out there. But it's not done to ruin a man's reputation. It's done because of what they did to us. They controlled us like they were gods, and they weren't gods. Just like Greenleaf. Where did he go? He went to, after they asked him to leave. And the story is true about the little boy who he molested. And the father comes into Bethel and says, I'll go to the police if you don't get rid of that man. And they got rid of him right away. So he's assigned, and he's pioneering down in New Orleans for a long time. He shouldn't have done that because of his potential to molest again. And then after a number of years there, he was out in California.
What's his name? What's his name, you say?
Greenleaf.
Greenleaf, and he was a governing body member?
Yeah.
And
He was removed. I think we were in Bethel 2
and he
years.
had accusation of child molestation?
Absolutely. In fact, the man who was a little boy then has actually come out over the years, and I even know his name. I think he spoke publicly on the internet and told that who he was and his story.
Wow. Wow.
It's just
I
people. That's
can't.
why I call it people junk. And I'm just a people. Um, so like Klein, in his old age, he wasn't there half the time upstairs. So I didn't give him any work. Some of the articles that got through, boy, can I talk about some of those articles. And got through. Well, the 3 governing body members in the writing department they were the first ones to get a new article to edit it or check it. And once it goes through them and they check it, it goes to the next bunch. It goes through 17 hands before it gets published. And Lloyd Berry over the writing department was on the list. He and Jack Barr and Klein were the 3 governing body members. Well, Lloyd lots of times wasn't in he was on zone visits, so he wasn't there. And Jack Barr was the same way. So they were busy men and also getting old and tired. So one of the most egregious articles that got through, because nobody was there to check it, and it was in the magazine. I'm trying to think, see, it's popped in my brain. By the year 2000, it will be over. It was in I believe in the Awake. I was on an airplane going to it. Joe was giving it. Joe was in Bethel Elder, and so once a month he had to go special somewhere. So we were on a plane, and I pulled out the latest Awake because it was put in our room 2 weeks before the public got it. So I took it with me, and I'm reading this article, and it says by the year 2000 it will be over. And I looked at Joe. I said, "Oh my God, are we ever in trouble? And we were. That thing lives to haunt the organization to this day.
I've seen a lot of articles, especially in the Revelation book. They expressed that, oh, in the 20th century,
Yes.
everything will be fulfilled. Everything will be fulfilled in the 20th century.
And they
And then
not,
they changed it. They had to upgrade this,
that
and they
was the
said
one.
in our day.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Particular one. And so they had strict orders after that one, never, ever to do that again. Well, when they're not there, and there it goes through their hands when they're there, but tired. Lloyd Berry died rather early and died during a talk that he was given at a convention. But he had major problems with his legs, and so that was a symptom of something far worse. And I actually, Joe and I actually got to know some of these men. We were friends with the Bars. We were friends with Sidlick and his wife. I could tell some of the funniest stories. She was from England, his wife, and she was half his age. And man, did she have a dirty mouth.
Oh
Yeah,
boy.
she cussed like a trooper. And it was hysterical sometimes, hysterical. But this is all inner life at the big house. But you don't, that to me did have mean that the beliefs were wrong. When I mean, I was in love with uh, everybody living forever. And when I started to really think about it, after I started really thinking, it's impossible, impossible. So
Wow. Wow. A lot of stories and information. Barb, we're gonna finish for today. We've been over
we
three
could go
hours
on
at
all night,
this.
couldn't we? You go.
And I have a gazillion more questions, but we're gonna leave it for maybe another one, okay?
Here's
Because
here's
I
a
think,
picture. I'll show you a picture.
yeah, show me the picture. Who is that?
That's me right there. And I'm talking to Jack Barr.
Oh
And that's
yeah.
our going away party. And that's the bar's room.
Okay.
We left Bethel a few days later. That's our going away party.
That was the part that I actually enjoyed quite a bit in the congregations, but they always did the goodbye parties or welcome parties if somebody joined, and it was a good excuse to have a party. And we had parties all the time. I enjoyed that part very very well.
Well,
Remember that.
while I got
Remember that.
these books out, I'm going to show them because I had to pull them all out. This is when we knew at Bethel.
Oh
That was
yeah, look at you. Look at you right there.
that's Joe. This is a car mechanic. They have him dressed up as a doctor. And that is October 8th, 1986. This one is the first article. I was in the engineering department, and I was the architect's assistant, which doesn't mean anything, but I mean, anyway, I was a researcher there too. I started out as a secretary, ended up being a researcher. Um, Somebody came to see me from the writing department and said, "We are increasing our buildings. The everything is growing by." They said, "Would you write an article?" I said, "I'm not in writing." I made a joke, you know. I said, "He's a put together an article," and this was the first article that I really put together um,
The growing family.
for the writing department, even though I
Okay.
wasn't in it. Okay, this is um this is a May 15th, 1989. This is an article, Show Love and Respect as a Husband. They asked for, I was in engineering, a picture. And so a picture of both of us. The only picture I had was the smallest one that's on there. So there's a picture of Joe and Barbara. But these are Bethelites. All of these people are couples in Bethel.
Right.
Okay, so that one's that one. This is an article that I wrote on the Bill of Rights, the 200th anniversary of the Bill of Rights. And I love that stuff on our Constitution. That is my favorite thing. And so that one,
Nice.
and the other one, why it was needed, you know. The other one is here. Students participate in National History Day. These were not witnesses, but were visiting because the girl had a assignment at school and she chose to write on Jehovah's Witnesses.
Okay.
So they came to Bethel to see if they could get more information, and they sent her to me in writing department. So I put together that. Okay, this was the one. See, I have these in sort of date order. This is one 1992 that caused woo. This is what a story this one is. Women deserving of respect.
Oh yeah. Okay.
So when we get together again, I'll tell you the background of how that came about. It's a doozy. This one is understanding difficult children. Uh, I know what I'm talking about because our kid had ADD when he was little.
Oh
So,
yeah. Okay.
so that's a major, that's a study article.
Yes. I
Yeah.
remember that one.
Okay. So
When they
I
become colorful, then my memory gets better because I was born in 79. So
you had to say that, didn't you? You just had to say that. When you kind of hinted at me saying what I knew about if you stood in front of the governing body and they would listen to you for 5 minutes, what would you
Oh
say?
yes.
Yeah, I would say listen to the victims. Nobody wanted to do that, and they didn't do it either. In April 8th, 1993, there's an article, and eventually the rule went out, no more watching the world and talking about the Catholic Church and pedophilia, because we had the problem. They had to say that. But this article is absolutely so interesting. April 8th, 1993, victims of pedophile priests speak out. I said victims speaking out.
Oh, which one is it? I'm
April
gonna
8th, 1993,
okay,
and
hold on. I'm gonna write this one down. April
8th.
8 or 1993,
That's right.
and that's awake.
Uh-huh. And this is all about what U.S. News and World Report said. 400 Roman Catholic priests have been reported to church or civil authorities and whatever. I actually got the article out from the internet. It's very easy to go on U.S. News and World Report and plug in what you want, and these articles pop out. And it was amazing, not necessarily this, but what led up to Spotlight. Remember
Yes.
the in Boston and the
Yeah.
movie
I want to leave the entire subject of pedophilia for our next
Okay,
interview because I know it's another 3 hours of just the topic alone. But
just,
I know, at least I know right now where you come from, what was your experience, who you knew in Bethel, right? What was your, um, experience in Bethel, and now the topic of pedophilia, which you're doing such a great work, right, for the victims and for the people who suffered all this. We still don't know what woke you up and why you left and what you're doing. That will be the next time. And
yes, and leading up till today,
yes,
that's the point. leading up
Yeah,
to today, what we're doing now to try to put an end to the hidden stuff.
exactly.
There's always going to be pedophilia, always. It's so old, you know, the
Of
16th,
course, of course.
16th century. That article, it goes back to the Reformation or the Catholic Church or whatever, Buddhists, even the Buddhists. I put articles
Everybody has it because
about the
it's
Buddhists.
you only find out about it after it happens. You
Yes,
cannot walk around and investigate people who have never done it. So after a victim comes out, then and only then you can find out that it took place. That's one. And how you react to it, what do you do with it, what kind of policies a church, uh, organization, government comes up with, that's what makes a difference, you know?
I'm
And
going to discuss all of that. I'm going to discuss penalty privilege, which is a very important subject to discuss. And we want laws changed on penalty privilege, on child abuse. I went to confession as a child.
yeah,
Millions and millions of people go to confession. That is penalty privilege. When you confess to a priest, whether you're in a box, whether you're in his office or wherever it is, when you confess to a clergyman and they abide by this privilege. The penitent is the person that did wrong, and you abide by the whole deal about what penitent privilege is. If it has to do with uh, uh, an average sin, whatever it is, even murder, we're not asking to change the laws on that. Uh, because that's not our affair. Uh, what our affair is how to deal with child abuse and someone who confesses child abuse to a priest. In 9 states, it's one. Or I have it listed here. 9 states have one thing. 24 states have something else.
yeah, yeah, it
Seven.
is a problem because government doesn't even agree on how to deal with this.
We
And
just
that
want
is
them to
really a
change
challenge. Yeah,
on child abuse.
yeah,
Make an exemption to
yeah,
penitent privilege to
yeah,
keep the secrets. Whatever you want to keep secrets on, fine.
yeah.
But all of the states need to say, okay, you're a clergyman, and they come to you with a sin and it's child abuse, then you have to tell us. In 7 states, they do that. They make the priest or the
Yeah.
clergyman, even Protestant
Yeah.
ministers,
Because they recognize finally that if they don't do it, they're protecting the pedophile, and the pedophile will go for other victims. And if they
exactly.
don't say anything, it will continue,
That's
right?
exactly right.
And
I have
and for the longest time, they're like, "Oh, it's none of my business. The victim can go and report it if they want to, but why do I have to report it?" Well, there is a reason why
That's
the
right.
victims don't report, and now that you are aware of it, why wouldn't you report it, right? Like you understand that this person will go and victimize others, right? So
And if it
it is a
isn't
learning
in,
process for sure
yeah,
for everybody.
if it isn't in that confidential arrangement of confession arrangement, if the priest hears about it,
Yes.
it's right fine. It is in most of the places mandated to report that, but that's not the problem. But that still there is too many states that have nothing to require a clergyman, not necessarily have to be Catholic, but anybody who is you confess to a clergy person, and you're telling him about what you did to a child. Every
Yeah.
state in this country, and that's what my website scars. That's what that's all about. And we now have the corporation 501c3. We are a legitimate uh, corporation, and we also, this takes money. Believe it or not, it
Oh,
takes
yeah, of
money. I've
course.
never
Yeah.
taken any money from people all these years. we have borne the expense. Even when I spoke at the Vatican, we never asked any money for doing this. And but when you're trying to change a law, and you got so much to deal with, we have to, now that we are a charity, we can accept donations. SCARS can accept donations. And, we're not busybodies and getting into the legislators' business and all of that.
Mhm.
What we're doing is asking, do what some of the other states are doing. It's mandatory. There, why couldn't it be in Tennessee, where I am? Tennessee's got broken down the law of penalty abuse different ways. But then when it comes to child abuse, they have to report it. That's the difference. It's mandatory. Some states have mandatory. If the priest hears about it, he has to go forward. But he can. In some states, the majority of them, and my paperwork is what we're going to discuss the next time. And so we have to do this. We have to have all the states. What's a big deal? Priests and spiritual leaders. It's better
Yeah.
to say spiritual
Yeah.
leaders. So I also have a wonderful, wonderful discussion on the Douglas Walsh versus Latham Clyde trial, Scotland, 1954. Wait till you hear that. You guys are going to be,
For a treat.
unless you've already heard about it. If you
No, I didn't. Leave it for the next time. Leave it for the
wait.
next time. I'm intrigued.
When I found out on this subject, and I'm going to quit talking in a minute, but I'll lead in because I'm a salesperson. I'm going to sell the Brooklyn Bridge here.
Okay, then.
When you hear this, you're going to find out when the Watchtower Society became a religion. They never
Oh,
were a religion before this trial. You're also going to find out how the Jehovah's Witnesses adopted the teachings of the Catholic Church in 1954. And
ooh.
those teachings is the biggest problem. It has brought the Watchtower to its knees. Yep. We have there's no doubt. And I'm going to show you something else. This is copy. And it's the best that we could do to get the copy. It's very old.
Yeah.
And this is, there's somebody that many of us know, and she was raised across the street in California, right across the street from a home that Nathan Knorr's wife, Audrey, her mother, was across the street because she was elderly and sick. And that was like a nursing home put together by Jehovah's Witnesses. And I think they had 7 or 8 elderly witnesses there. So anyway, her uncle was in that congregation. He was congregation servant. So Nora would come out pretty often with his wife so his wife could visit her mother. And when he was there, he'd give a talk. He always gave a talk, as far as I know, I was told. And the talk he gave is, we're going to discuss this because it is the reason the Watchtower also is in the predicament they're in. It's 1951, and the congregation servant, when he took notes, and then when he got home afterward, he typed up his notes, and those notes were, he's long dead, and this child, she grew up and she left the organization with her family, and she has all of her uncle's stuff. All was in his cabinets and all his written stuff as a congregation servant. And this talk is that, and it's Brother Noah's answers to questions, and of all things, in 1947, the Watchtower came out. It was about excommunication, and the society puts in the 1947 magazine that it's pagan and where it comes from and the details. God would never have anything like to excommunicate people like the Catholic Church does, blah, 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 blah. And then all of a sudden, December 1st, 1951, he's given this talk. Guess what it's on? Disfellowshipping. It's the first time. The magazine hasn't got anything on it. This is his talk. And here, this courageous servant, these are from his notes. And so, guess what? 1952 is when disfellowshipping, central article in the Watchtower to study, introducing us all into disfellowshipping. And look where we are now with disfellowshipping and shunning in Norway. Look at where we are. And that's when it was introduced. 3 or 4 years after the Watchtower said, or the I think it was the Awake, that the Catholic Church excommunicates and it's bad news. And they said, this is something even the gal who had this and shared it with me didn't know.
Who was the president at that time?
Nor
was president, right?
Yeah. And this is the reason Nor took such a strong stand on it. Only somebody who's like me in research would know, because I was told I've told all kinds of things by men who were there for 40, 50 years. And the reason was that there was a wife swapping at Bethel. I saw your eyebrows go up.
Well, because I heard that was happening in the missionary homes, and this is why they closed all the missionary homes and they separated all the missionaries, because that stuff like that was happening, right?
Like that. And so it was at Bethel, there was a couple. I look back at this. I'm not sure if it was one couple or two couples, but I can't put my finger on that in my brain. And in Brooklyn Heights, there's was people who lived in Brooklyn Heights that were witnesses. And those folk would come into the Kingdom Hall that was in the original building, the 124 building that Beecher owned a million years ago. That's where the Kingdom Hall was. So the ones who were witnesses that lived in the neighbor came to Bethel, and they got to know Bethelites. And so this is even before my husband. My husband goes into Bethel in 56. So that's how these people met each other. And there was eventually they found out about the wife swapping. That's where our disfellowshipping policies came from.
Wow.
And so we can even
my head is exploding, Barb. We have to finish and stop at this. Thank you so much for everything that you have said and contributing, and I can't wait for the next one. I know we pushed it. We're like over 3 hours right now, so
that's nothing.
I know. I knew it's gonna be long. I prepared myself.
Yeah, I had to learn all this in the past 5 years. That's why I didn't answer your request 5 years ago for me to appear, because I had to learn. Took me 11 years at Bethel.
I'm about to go to sleep because it's almost midnight over here. So thank you so much. And we will be in touch. We'll schedule the next one, but I really appreciate that you took the time to.
Thank you for asking. And remember, folks, I'm smiling, but so much of this is not a joke. I'm smiling because what else am I going to do? I'm not going to get here and sit here and lambaste people and make more misery out of it. You don't make lemonade out of lemons.
Yeah.
And we have too many lemons in the organization. You can't make lemonade, but you can try to understand it's a people thing. And we all have our own ways about looking at life.
Yeah. Thank
So,
you. Thank you so much. And
you're
I
welcome.
hope you guys will see the part 2.
Thank you. Bye bye.